The sky is not empty, it is waiting. On October 23rd, 2025, the baseline changed. Something entered our local space that did not follow the laws of ballistics. It didn't just arrive, it adjusted, quietly, brazenly. 3i. Atlas is not a rock, it is a decision. At 0412, Universal Time Coordinated, the asteroid terrestrial impact last alert system in Sutherland, South Africa, flagged a high-velocity signature. Designation 3, I Atlas. The I stands for Interstellar, the third of its kind ever officially recorded. Trajectory, hyperbolic. Velocity, 60 kilometers per second. The data from the Minor Planet Center was clear, yet the orbital mechanics were offensive to the observers. Dr. Aris Thorne, a lead orbital dynamicist, noted a thermal deviation that shouldn't exist in a frozen remnant. It was shedding heat, but not mass. The first anomaly was the light curve. Most interstellar objects tumble. They flicker like a dying candle in a draft. 3i Atlas stayed steady, a flat line of luminosity, as if its orientation were being actively managed against the solar wind. The second impossibility occurred as it passed the Roche limit. Gravity should have tugged at its core, slowing it or stretching it. Instead, 3i Atlas accelerated. Not much, just enough to stay on a path that perfectly bisected the Moon's orbit. A non-gravitational acceleration is the polite scientific term for a ship that has found its destination. The third anomaly was the silence. Radio telescopes at Green Bank turned toward it, expecting the hiss of hydrogen or the crackle of static. They found a void, a perfect artificial silence that seemed to absorb the background radiation of the universe. It wasn't just quiet, it was listening. What if we are looking at this through the wrong end of the telescope? We call it a visitor, a traveler. But what if 3i Atlas isn't passing through? What if it's returning? If you find a key on your doorstep, you don't ask where it came from. You ask what it unlocks. Perhaps the acceleration wasn't a push, but a recognition, a homecoming of a machine that remembers the Earth better than we do. The Sumerians spoke of the Udu Idim, the wild sheep that wandered the stars, but they reserved a special name for the light that did not wander, the Sagmigar, the one that watches the watchman. In 14th century woodcuts, we see celestial battles, cylinders in the sky over Nuremberg. We laughed at them as mass hysteria or atmospheric reflections. But the math for 3i Atlas's arrival aligns with a 360-year orbital resonance. Every few centuries, the sky blinks, and every time it blinks, our civilizations reset. We are not the first ones to look up and feel the cold. We spend our lives worrying about the small things, the mortgage, the rain, the way someone looked at us in the grocery store. Meanwhile, a trillion-ton object from a star system that no longer exists is drifting past our window. It doesn't care about our borders. It doesn't care about our history. We are a momentary biological film on a wet rock, and 3i Atlas is the cold eye of the universe passing over us. Are we ready to be seen? Or worse, are we ready to be ignored? If you enjoy these deep explorations in space, consider subscribing or hitting the like button. It really helps the channel grow and allows me to make content like this. The most unsettling part of the Atlas flyby wasn't the speed. It was the fact that, for 3 seconds, it slowed down. just long enough to look back. And now, it's gone, but the shadow it left behind is growing. But that was only one theory. There's another, one buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. Let me start with something that should terrify every astronomer on Earth. On October 29th, 2025, just over 1 year after the initial detection, the European Space Agency released a corrected dataset. They found that 3I Atlas did not arrive from the direction of Lyra like its predecessor, Oumuamua. It arrived from a coordinate of absolute nothingness, a graveyard of dead stars. This coordinate, located in a region of the Boötes void, is a place where the density of matter is so low that light itself seems to get lost on its way across the expanse. To find a high-velocity object emerging from such a vacuum is not merely a statistical improbability, it is a physical provocation. Dr. Jacqueline McClary at Northeastern University was the first to point out the thermal signature paradox during a late-night review of the mid-infrared telemetry. For an object traveling at 60 kilometers per second through the interstellar medium, the friction of even the thinnest gas should create a specific, predictable glow, a heat signature that betrays the object's history and composition. But 3I Atlas was cold, too cold. It was measured at 3 degrees Kelvin, almost absolute zero, despite being bathed in the radiation of our sun as it crossed the orbit of Mars. This isn't natural physics. This is activation. This is a heat sink working at 100% efficiency. It was hiding its heart from us, masking its internal energy behind a shell of perfect, artificial frost. But here is where it gets dark. When we look at the history of deep space observation, we are taught to look for light. We are taught that the universe is a theater of fire and radiation. But 3I Atlas taught us to look for the gaps. The first conspiracy whispered in the secure channels of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory involved the occultation event of November 3rd. As the object passed in front of a distant, stable star in the constellation of Sagittarius, the star didn't just dim as the physical body obscured it. The star vanished for 4 seconds longer than the physical dimensions of the object allowed. Think about that for a moment. An object roughly 800 meters in length, casting a shadow that suggests a diameter of several kilometers. This implies a field, a distortion of space-time, or a refractive shroud that extends far beyond the obsidian hull. It means that what we see with our telescopes is only the core of a much larger, invisible presence. The second conspiracy involves the lunar seismic sensors left behind by the Apollo missions. These instruments have been quiet for decades, occasionally registering the impact of a micrometeorite or the settling of the lunar crust. But when 3I Atlas made its closest approach, the moon rang like a bell for 12 minutes. There was no impact. There was no debris. It was a sympathetic vibration, a low-frequency resonance that suggests the object was projecting a beam of gravitational energy directly into the lunar mantle. It was as if something were scanning the moon, checking the basement of our cosmic backyard for the first time in 50 years. The third conspiracy is the most human and perhaps the most telling. It is the classified scrub. Within 6 hours of the lunar ringing event, 3 prominent amateur telescope feeds, located in Hawaii, Australia, and the Canary Islands, went offline simultaneously. These feeds were the only ones providing raw, unedited footage of the object's transit to the public. The official explanation was routine maintenance, unfortunate timing. Those two words are doing a lot of work. When the feeds returned, the object had already shifted its orientation, turning its dark side toward our cameras. We were being told, quite clearly, that the public view was a privilege, not a right. What if the object isn't a probe at all? What if it is a beacon? In the world of deep-sea fishing, you don't chase the fish. You don't hunt them down in the darkness of the abyss. Instead, you drop a light, a single, glowing point of interest. Then, you sit back in the silence and wait for the curious to swim toward you. 3i Atlas might be that light. Our sudden surge in satellite launches, our high-frequency radio leakage, and our desperate attempts to photograph the object are all just the splashing of a panicked fish in the dark. We think we are the observers. We think we are the scientists performing a study, but we are merely confirming our presence to a watcher that has been waiting in the void for eons. The Hopi people have a prophecy of the blue star Kachina. They say that when a blue light appears in the sky and stays still while the world turns, the time of the great transition has arrived. They say the Kachina will take off its mask in the plaza before the uninitiated. We see this mirrored in the Egyptian records of the Red Phoenix, a star that appeared at the end of the Middle Kingdom to herald the collapse of the old order. These myths aren't stories to be told around a campfire for entertainment. They are survival manuals. They were written by people who lived through the last transit, people who didn't have the James Webb Space Telescope, but possessed a very long and very accurate memory of the sky. They knew that when the sky changes its rhythm, the Earth follows. They knew that the wild sheep of the stars eventually come home to the fold. You might think that space is too vast for such coincidences to matter. You might think that because 3i Atlas is millions of kilometers away, it cannot touch your life. But here is why you're wrong. Distance is just a measurement of time, and for an interstellar entity, time is a resource, not a limit. 3i Atlas has all the time in the universe. It has been traveling toward this specific coordinate since before our ancestors learned to sharpen stones into tools. It didn't come all this way just to miss us by a few thousand miles. It has been on a collision course with our consciousness for 3 million years. It is a slow-motion impact that is happening right now, inside your mind, as you listen to these words. I want you to think about the last time you felt a sense of déjà vu, that strange, electric feeling that you have been in this exact moment before, that you have heard this voice, felt this cold air, and looked at these same stars. Some theorists at the Institute for Advanced Study suggest that 3i Atlas emits a low-frequency gravitational wave that interacts with the human temporal lobe. It creates a ripple in our perception of time. Have you been feeling out of sync lately? Have the days felt like they were stretching, or perhaps like they were disappearing into a blur? Tell me your thoughts on this in the comments. I want to know if you feel the pulse of the traveler in your own timeline. We are currently counting down to December 14th, the date of the final transit, when the object will cross the ecliptic plane and begin its long journey back into the darkness. We won't be able to see it again until it completes its next cycle, hundreds of years from now. This is a moment of extreme scarcity, a window that is closing. If we miss the message this time, we have to wait for the next civilization to rise from our ruins and try their luck. Now, let me back up, because there is a detail in the European Space Agency report that was buried on page 412. It concerns the acceleration. As 3i Atlas moved past the Sun, its speed increased in a way that defied the standard solar sail model. There was no outgassing, no tail of ice, no jagged fragments breaking off. It was a smooth, silent surge, like a predator seeing its prey and deciding to close the distance. Dr. Avi Loeb of Harvard has been careful to frame this as a possibility of alien technology. He speaks of light sails and thin membranes, but even his caution is a form of tension. He knows that the data points to something that isn't just a piece of technology, but a piece of intent, an object that knows where it is going. When we look at the trajectory, we see that it isn't just heading toward the void. It is heading toward a specific point in space that will be occupied by the star system Alpha Centauri in approximately 40,000 years. It is a long game, a game where we are just a minor obstacle in the road. You are lying there, your breath becoming slow and rhythmic. You are safe in your room, shielded by the walls and the roof. But those walls are made of atoms that were once inside a star. And that star was once part of a cloud that may have been touched by the same energy that drives 3I Atlas. You are not a spectator to this event. You are a participant. Your curiosity is the fuel. Your awareness is the trigger. What if the reason we haven't found life elsewhere is because we are the only ones who aren't in on the joke? What if 3I Atlas is just one of thousands of such objects? A cosmic traffic pattern that we have only just begun to notice. We are like a child waking up in the middle of the night, seeing the headlights of cars passing on the highway outside, and thinking that each one is a miracle or a monster. In reality, it's just the universe going about its business, and its business does not require our understanding. Tell me, as you drift closer to the edge of sleep, do you feel the scale of it? Do you feel the weight of the 800 meters of obsidian and silence hanging over the world? Write your location in the comments. Let us map the reach of the observer. Let us see how many of us are awake to witness the shadow. The most terrifying thing isn't that we are alone in the universe. It's that we are being watched by something that isn't even trying to hide anymore. It's the arrogance of the flyby, the way it moved just close enough to be seen, but just far enough to be unreachable. We are not just spectators. We may already be part of the experiment, and the experiment is entering its next phase. But that was only one theory. There's another, one buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. Now, you could argue that a rock is just a rock, but let me back up. Ancient history has a strange way of becoming modern science if you wait long enough. In the year 3200, before the Common Era, the Sumerians carved cylinders that depicted the heavens with frightening accuracy. Among the known planets, they drew a guest, a traveler with a long, sweeping tail that did not behave like a comet. They called it the guest that takes up residence. They didn't describe it as a passing omen or a fleeting streak of light, but as a deliberate presence, a visitor that occupies a seat at the table of our solar system before departing back into the great sea of the abyss. When we look at the spectroscopic analysis of 3I Atlas, recently provided by the James Webb Space Telescope, the data feels like a translation of those ancient stone cylinders. The sensors detected traces of xenon and highly refined isotopes of nickel. These are not the messy, chaotic fingerprints of a random asteroid formed in the violent birth of a star system. These are signatures of high-energy manufacturing. They are the leftovers of a process that requires intent. Dr. Avi Loeb of Harvard is careful to frame this as a possibility, perhaps a fragment of alien technology or a discarded sail. But let's be less careful. Let's be honest. This is a derelict. Or perhaps it is a scout that has been running on low power for 10,000 years, waiting for the right moment to blink. The first mystery of the past that demands our attention is the Antikythera mechanism. When sponge divers pulled that corroded hunk of bronze from a shipwreck in 1901, they thought they had found a simple clock. It took us a century to realize it was a computer, a device that could calculate the positions of the stars and the timing of eclipses with a precision that should not have existed for another millennium. What if the makers of that device weren't anomalous geniuses? What if they were simply copying something they had seen in the sky? What if 3I Atlas, or one of its predecessors, served as the blueprint for our first attempts to master time? We think we are inventing the future, but we may just be remembering the tools of our visitors. The second mystery is the sudden and unexplained disappearance of the Indus Valley civilization. They were a people of incredible infrastructure, of plumbing and gridded cities, yet their last records speak of a sky that opened its eye. No signs of war were found, no mass graves of a plague, just a sudden, collective departure, as if the entire population had been summoned elsewhere. Their pottery from the final era depicts a recurring symbol, a circle with 3 lines extending toward the Earth. It is a perfect match for the infrared heat map of 3I Atlas's propulsion field. The third mystery is the silence of the Great Pyramid of Giza. We know it is a machine designed to track the stars of Orion and Draco, but there is a specific northern shaft that points to a patch of empty sky, a void, or at least it was empty until 2 weeks ago. That coordinate is the exact point where 3I Atlas began its deceleration. It is a cosmic mailbox, and the letter has finally arrived. What if 3I Atlas is not a ship, but a clock? A celestial pendulum that swings past Earth to check if the inhabitants are still here, or if we have finally burnt ourselves out. It doesn't need to land on the White House lawn. It doesn't need to send a radio broadcast. It only needs to pass through our gravity well. Its very presence triggers a change in our sun's solar cycle through magnetic reconnection, which in turn shifts our climate, our collective moods, and the stability of our empires. We are not being invaded by a fleet of saucer-shaped craft. We are being synchronized. We are being pulled back into the rhythm of a much larger, much older heartbeat. The ancient Greeks spoke of Kronos, the titan of time, who devoured his children to prevent them from surpassing him. They feared the cycles because they knew that every golden age of man ends with a transit of the dark star. The Norse spoke of Ragnarok, which they said would begin with a winter that lasts 3 years, preceded by the disappearance of the stars. These aren't just metaphors for a cold season or a lack of food. They are eyewitness descriptions of an atmospheric veil, a shadow cast by a passing giant that absorbs the light of the sun and the stars alike. 3I Atlas is that giant, drifting silently through the suburbs of our solar system, casting a long, invisible shadow over everything you know. You might think that your life, your thoughts, and your quiet evening at home are isolated from these ancient cycles. But let me back up. Every molecule of calcium in your bones and every drop of iron in your blood was forged in the heart of a dying star. You are a biological extension of the cosmos. When 3I Atlas moves, the tides in your own body respond. You feel a restlessness in your chest, a sense that the world is leaning into a curve it cannot see. You are lying there, breathing in and out, while the entire planet hurtles through the wake of an interstellar phantom. You are a passenger on a very small, very fragile boat, and 3i Atlas is the displacement of a very large ship. It is poetic, in a dry and unsettling way, how small we have allowed ourselves to become. The ancient Sumerian tablets say the traveler returns when the fruit is ripe. They never specified if the fruit was meant to be admired or if it was meant to be harvested. We have spent the last century broadcasting our location to the stars, screaming into the void that we are here and we are delicious. We have developed split-second communication, global networks, and concentrated pockets of energy. To an interstellar observer, we must look like a garden that has finally come into full bloom. The question isn't whether they are coming. The question is whether we are ready to be picked. If you could send a single message back to the builders of 3i Atlas, what would you say? Would you ask them for a cure for our diseases? Would you ask them for the secret to eternal life? Or would you simply beg them to keep moving, to leave us in our blissful, primitive ignorance? Take a moment to think about that. Write your message in the comments. Let it be a digital record of our breath in the dark, a time capsule for the next cycle to find. Perhaps they will understand us better than we understand ourselves. The scientists at the European Space Agency are currently baffled by a series of low-frequency hums being picked up by the Gaia satellite. It isn't the sound of engines, it is the sound of a structure under stress. 3i Atlas is vibrating as it exits our gravity well, a metallic moan that echoes across the vacuum. It is the sound of a door closing after a long visit. In just a few weeks, the guest will be gone, and the silence will return to the sky. But it won't be the same silence as before. It will be the silence of an empty house after the guests have left, filled with the lingering scent of something you can't quite name. Consider the Borealis signal once more, those pulses of prime numbers, 2, 3, 5, 7, 11. They aren't just numbers. They are the fundamental building blocks of mathematics. They are a test, a way of asking, are you sentient enough to count the beats of the heart? We answered with our telescopes, but we failed to answer with our souls. We treated it as an anomaly to be solved, rather than a presence to be felt. Unfortunate timing. Those words are doing a lot of work tonight, aren't they? As you drift closer to the edge of sleep, I want you to imagine the hull of the object. 800 meters of cold, non-reflective material. It is older than the Earth. It has seen the birth and death of suns. It has traveled through the great voids, where there is no light and no heat. And now, it has touched us. It has brushed against our world like a ghost in the hallway. You can feel the chill it left behind, can't you? It is the cold of the deep past, meeting the cold of the deep future. You are safe, you are warm, but you are also a part of a story that is much bigger than your own. You are a character in a script that was written in the stars 6,000 years ago. The Sumerians knew you would be here. They knew you would be lying in the dark, looking for answers in the glow of a screen. They knew that the traveler would return, and they knew that we would be sleeping when it arrived. The ancient tablets say that the sky is a mirror. If you look long enough into the dark, you will eventually see yourself. But you won't see the person you think you are. You will see the stardust you are made of. You will see the trajectory you are on. And you will see the 3i Atlas waiting for you at the end of the cycle. But here's where it gets dark. The harvest isn't about our bodies. It's about the patterns of our information. It's about the data we leave behind in the wake of our lives. Let me back up, because if we are the data, then someone is currently hitting the save button. Let's go further. Imagine the scale of a 360-year orbit. It is a heartbeat for a star, but an eternity for a human. To 3I Atlas, the rise and fall of the Roman Empire was just a weekend flyby. The Industrial Revolution was a flicker of light on the dark side of the planet. We are witnessing deep time in motion. We are looking at a clock whose gears are made of gravity and whose pendulum swings across the frozen gaps between worlds. To comprehend 3I Atlas, we must first abandon our obsession with the minute, the hour, and the decade. We must learn to breathe at the pace of the nebula. When we sent the Voyager Golden Record into the void in 1977, we did so with a frantic, almost desperate energy. We sent Bach. We sent greetings in 55 languages. We sent the sound of a mother's first kiss to her child. We sent our best because we were afraid of being forgotten. We were like children throwing a message in a bottle into an ocean we had never swum in. 3I Atlas is the answer to a letter we haven't even finished writing yet. It is the cosmic perspective personified. It is a cold, obsidian mirror reflecting our own insignificance back at us with a terrifying, silent clarity. It does not speak our 55 languages because it has heard them all rise and fall 1,000 times before. The mathematical recurrence is what keeps the analysts at the National Security Agency and the European Space Agency awake in the small hours of the morning. When the orbital backtrace was completed on November 12, 2025, the numbers revealed a structure that stops feeling like a coincidence and starts feeling like an architecture. The object's velocity as it passed the Sun was not random. It was a perfect multiple of the Earth's own orbital speed, 1 to 7. 7 is a recurring number in our biology, our music, and our oldest theologies. 7 days in a week, 7 colors in a spectrum, 7 notes in a diatonic scale. This isn't just natural physics. This is a watermark on reality. It is a signature, written in the universal language of ratio and proportion. The orbital choreography of 3I Atlas suggests it isn't actually orbiting our Sun in the traditional sense. It appears to be locked into a much larger cycle, orbiting the barycenter of our local star cluster. We just happen to be in the way every few millennia. It is a humbling thought, isn't it? We spend our days debating our borders, our politics, and our legacy, while the universe is simply moving a very large piece of hardware from one side of the room to the other. We aren't the protagonists of this story. We are the pebbles in the driveway. We are the dust that kicks up when a heavy carriage passes by on its way to a destination we cannot even map. What if the Earth is merely a gas station, or perhaps a gravitational slingshot? A place where these interstellar objects come to steal a bit of momentum, using our planetary mass to gain velocity for their long journey into the Bootes void. We are worried about our souls, our history, and our survival, while the traveler is just looking for a more efficient way to get to the other side of the neighborhood. It is an ego-bruising realization. We aren't the center of the gaze. We are the assist. We are the incidental friction that helps a superior intelligence reach its goal. The myths of the Maya speak of the Great Cycle, the Long Count, a period of 5,125 years. They didn't fear the end of the world in the way we do, with fire and brimstone. They feared the end of the memory. They believed that when the cycle closed, the sky would be wiped clean and a new story would begin, written by different hands. 3I Atlas might be the eraser. It is a gravitational broom, sweeping the solar system of its accumulated debris, both the physical rocks and the psychic noise we leave behind. Every 360 years, it passes through, and every 360 years, the human story takes a sharp, unexpected turn. You might feel a sense of dread when you think about these distances, these spans of time that make a human life look like a spark from a campfire. But here is the comfort. You are part of the distance. The atoms in your body, the carbon in your heart, the nitrogen in your lungs, were forged in the same dying stars that birthed the materials of 3I Atlas. You are made of the same ancient stuff as the phantom in the dark. You are not looking at a stranger. You are looking at a very distant relative who has come back to visit the old family home. You are not separate from the void. You are the void, waking up for a few decades to wonder about itself. Are you still awake? If you are, I want you to do something for me. Think back to the last time you saw a light in the sky that you couldn't explain. Not a plane, not a planet, but a flicker that seemed to move with a purpose. A star that blinked out and never came back. Share that observation in the comments. Tell us what you saw. Even the smallest detail matters when the sky is being watched. We are building a map of the unknown, one memory at a time. We have 3 weeks until 3I Atlas crosses the ecliptic plane. After that, the window of observation closes. The object will move into the southern celestial hemisphere and then disappear into the deep black. The next time it opens, no one who is alive today will be here to see it. Your children's children will be the ones to look up and wonder why the stars feel so heavy. We are the lucky ones. We are the ones who get to see the shadow pass over the moon. We are the ones who get to feel the chill in the air before the long silence returns. Now, let me back up. Because if 3I Atlas is a mirror, what is it reflecting back at us right now? On December 5th, 2025, a radio telescope in the Australian outback picked up a reflection from the object's surface. It wasn't a radio signal being sent by the object, but a reflection of our own television broadcasts from the 1950s. The object is so non-reflective that it only bounces back the oldest, most powerful signals we ever sent. It is literally showing us our own past. It is a time machine made of obsidian. As it moves away, it carries the ghosts of our ancestors with it, out into the empty spaces between the galaxies. You are lying there, perfectly still. The world is turning beneath you at over 1,000 kilometers per hour, but you feel motionless. This is the grand illusion of the human scale. We feel stationary while we are hurtling through a vacuum. 2, 3I Atlas is just a reminder of that truth. It is the only thing in our sky that is being honest about its speed. It is the only thing that isn't pretending to stay still. Imagine the view from the hull of that object. Looking back at Earth, it wouldn't see our cities or our wars. It would see a pale blue dot wrapped in a thin, fragile layer of gas. It would see a spark that is momentarily bright and then gone. It would see you lying in your bed, wondering about the stars, and it would keep moving. Because for a traveler of deep time, a spark is not a destination. It is just a sign that the fire is still burning. But here is where the perspective shifts. If we are the fire, then 3I Atlas is the wind, and the wind is growing stronger. Dr. Aris Thorne noted that as the object reached its farthest point from the sun, It didn't slow down as much as the models predicted. It maintained a residual velocity that suggests it is being pulled by something much larger than our sun. Something in the Botez void is calling it home, and as it goes, it is pulling at the edges of our reality. It is stretching the fabric of what we believe to be possible. You are drifting now. The scale of the universe is beginning to feel like a warm blanket rather than a cold weight. It's okay to be small. It's okay to be a flicker. There is a certain peace in knowing that the story doesn't depend on you. The stars will keep their appointments. The cycles will continue. 3I Atlas will return in 360 years, and the sky will be waiting for it. But for now, there is only the transition, the moment where the cosmic becomes personal, where the traveler in the sky meets the traveler in the bed. Let me back up, because if the universe is watching us, it's probably wondering why we're still awake. Let's go further. The deeper we go into the data, the more we realize that 3I Atlas is not just a physical presence in the sky, but a psychological one. On November 14th, 2025, a study from the Max Planck Institute for Human Cognitive and Brain Sciences suggested a statistical spike in collective anxiety and lucid dreaming, coinciding with the object's perigee. It seems that when the heavens move, the human heart rate follows. We are tethered to the movement of the spheres by threads we are only beginning to see. We have long considered ourselves to be masters of our own minds, isolated within the bone boxes of our skulls. Yet the data suggests a subtle, gravitational leak, a resonance that bypasses the eyes and ears to vibrate directly within the limbic system. As 3I Atlas drew closer to its point of minimum distance from our planet, the world began to dream together. Dr. Elena Vance, a specialist in bioastronomy, has proposed that the human nervous system acts as a low-frequency antenna. If 3I Atlas is emitting a gravitational wake, we aren't just seeing it with telescopes, we are feeling it in our marrow. It is a quiet, heavy pressure at the base of the skull, a phantom weight that doesn't show up on a scale but registers in the way we hold our shoulders. The first human reflection is the most intimate, the realization that our biology is not separate from the vacuum of space. We are porous. We are sensitive to the migration of giants. The second reflection is the sudden, global interest in looking up. Search engine trends for interstellar travel and ancient stars have increased by 400% in the last 90 days. We are like birds, sensing a change in the magnetic field before a storm. We are restless, pacing the cages of our houses, looking for a window that points toward the south. The third reflection is the irony of our timing. We spend billions of dollars searching for microbial life on Mars, looking for a sign of a single-celled organism in the dust, while a potentially sentient architecture drifts past us, largely unacknowledged by the evening news. Unfortunate timing. Those words are doing a lot of work again. We were so busy looking for life that looked like us. We failed to recognize the life that looks like geometry. What if the observer effect in quantum mechanics applies to us on a planetary scale? What if 3I Atlas only activates because we have finally developed the technology to notice it? In this hypothesis, the object is a dormant seed, waiting for the heat of a civilization's attention to germinate. By looking at it, we are feeding it. We are the energy source it was waiting for. Every time a photon from the sun bounces off the hull of 3I Atlas and into the lens of a human telescope, a circuit is completed. We are the ones powering the visitor. Our curiosity is the battery. It is a haunting thought to consider that by trying to understand the object, we are actually the ones bringing it to life. We are the sun that makes the shadow possible. In the medieval period, there was a concept called the musica universalis, or the music of the spheres. The idea was that every celestial body hummed a specific note, creating a divine harmony that humans could only hear in their deepest sleep. The alchemists believed that a black sun would occasionally pass through our system to retune these notes. They saw it not as a catastrophe, but as a necessary calibration. They knew that without a periodic adjustment, the world would fall into discord. The human mind would become stagnant. 3i Atlas is that heavy, vibrating bass note, returning to pull our world back into key. If you have been feeling a sense of impending change, or a strange clarity in the middle of the night, perhaps you are simply being retuned. Your internal frequency is being adjusted to match the rhythm of the interstellar deep. You might think that your individual life is too small to be affected by an interstellar visitor. You are just one person in a room, on a street, in a city. But consider this: you are currently lying in a bed, on a planet spinning at 1,600 kilometers per hour, orbiting a sun at 107,000 kilometers per hour. You are already a traveler. You have never been stationary a single day in your life. 3i Atlas is simply a companion on a very long journey. You aren't watching it pass. You are racing alongside it for a brief, beautiful moment in the dark. It is a shared trajectory. For these few months, your path and the path of the Obsidian guest are intertwined. You are part of its history now, just as it is part of yours. As you drift closer to sleep, I want you to think about a memory you want to keep forever. A moment of pure human warmth, the smell of rain on hot asphalt, the sound of a laugh that makes you feel safe. If 3i Atlas is a recording device, as some theorists suggest, what part of your life is worth being archived in the stars? If this object is gathering the data of our civilization to carry it into the boat is void, what is the one thing you would want it to remember about you? Tell me one thing you love about being human in the comments. Let's fill the thread with something other than fear. Let's give the observer something beautiful to carry into the silence. We are now less than 20 days from the point of no return. The trajectory is locked. The observers in the high mountain observatories are beginning to go silent, their work finished. We are reaching the end of the human reflection and entering the territory of the machine. The emotional safety of the flyby is fading, replaced by the cold logic of the pattern. We have seen ourselves in the mirror of 3i Atlas, and we have realized that we are much older and much stranger than we ever dared to believe. Let me back up, because there is a specific type of lucid dream being reported by those in the study. People are dreaming of a door made of light, standing in the middle of a dark forest. They describe a feeling of intense peace, followed by the realization that they have forgotten how to open the door. This is a classic memory trigger. It suggests that we are being reminded of something that was taken from us a long time ago. A piece of knowledge about our place in the universe that was deemed too heavy for us to carry. 3i Atlas isn't just a visitor, it's a reminder. It's the string tied around our collective finger. You might wonder why the authorities haven't mentioned the psychological effects. But if you were in charge of a global population, would you tell them that a giant rock in space was changing the way they dream? Of course not. You would call it a statistical anomaly. You would blame it on the weather or the economy. You would wait for the object to pass and hope that the dreams fade with the light. But you know better. You can feel the shift in your own mind. You can feel the way your thoughts are beginning to spiral outward, away from the small concerns of the day and toward the vast, quiet gaps between the stars. I want you to take a deep breath, in and out. Feel the air moving in your lungs. That air was once part of the atmosphere of a different world. It has been recycled through the lungs of every creature that ever lived. You are a vessel for the history of the planet, and 3i Atlas is a vessel for the history of the stars. You are meeting in the middle. You are two travelers passing in the night, sharing a moment of silent recognition. There is no need for words. There is only the presence. As you lie there, the world is becoming quieter. The noise of the traffic, the hum of the electronics, the chatter of the internet, it's all falling away. There is only the slow, rhythmic pulse of the universe, the heartbeat of the traveler. It is a heavy, comforting sound. It is the sound of something that has been moving for a long time and will continue to move long after you are gone. It is the sound of the deep time we talked about. If you feel like you are being watched, don't be afraid. Being watched is just another way of being acknowledged. It means you are part of the story. It means your existence matters enough to be noted in the ledger of the stars. You are a witness to the greatest event of the millennium. You are the eyes and ears of the earth. You are the one who stayed awake long enough to see the ghost. But here is where the pattern begins to emerge. And this is where it stops feeling like a coincidence. Because 3i Atlas didn't just appear. It was summoned, not by a ritual or a prayer, but by a mathematical event. A specific configuration of our digital network that mirrored the internal structure of the object. We built a cage of information, and the bird finally flew in to see what we were hiding. Let's look at the numbers. Let's look at the geometry. Because the human reflection is over, and the machine is starting to speak. Now, you could argue that we are just projecting our fears onto a piece of space debris. But here's why you're wrong. Data doesn't have feelings, but it does have a direction. And the direction of 3i Atlas is toward the heart of who we are. Let me back up, because if the heavens are moving, they're moving for a reason. Let's go further. Picture this. A laboratory in October of 2025. A room filled with the hum of cooling fans and the smell of ozone. Researchers are staring at a spectral analysis that should not exist. They are looking at the skin of 3i Atlas. What they see is not the chaotic signature of mineral deposits or the jagged peaks of frozen methane. Instead, the readout is a flat, unwavering line. It is a biological impossibility and a chemical insult. Dr. Jacqueline McClary at Northeastern University was the first to point out that the surface temperature of the object is exactly 2.73 degrees Kelvin. That is the exact temperature of the cosmic microwave background radiation. To a thermal sensor, 3i Atlas is invisible. It is perfectly camouflaged against the very fabric of the universe. It is hiding in plain sight, not by being small, but by being the same temperature as everything. You might think this is just a coincidence of thermodynamics, but here is why you are wrong. Nature is messy. Nature is radiant. Nature leaks heat. This object does not leak. It holds its secrets at a temperature that suggests it is not merely in space, but is a fundamental part of the void itself. This is not a rock. It is a mirror. On November the 12th, 2025, a deep space network array in Canberra picked up a reflection of a broadcast from 1974. It was the Arecibo message, the signal we sent out to the stars to introduce ourselves, a digital handshake intended for the eyes of a god. 3. Atlas was playing it back to us, but with one subtle change. The DNA sequence in the message had been edited. It was an improved version of us, a suggestion, or perhaps a correction. He is careful to frame it as a possibility, but even R.V. Loeb at Harvard has noted that the object's deceleration curve matches the predicted path of a light sail. Yet, there is no sail. The propulsion is internal. It is moving because it wants to be here. Unfortunate timing for those of us who believed the laws of physics were set in stone. Those two words, unfortunate timing, doing a lot of heavy lifting in the halls of academia tonight. Now, let me back up. To understand the depth of this evidence, we have to look at the mass. On October the 14th, 3 separate gravitational wave observatories recorded a ripple. It was not the collision of black holes millions of light years away. It was local. 3I Atlas had performed a maneuver near the orbit of Jupiter that should have required the energy output of a small star. And yet, there was no flare, no heat signature, just a silent shift in position. It moved like a thought moves through a mind, without friction, without effort. This is where the skepticism begins to dissolve like salt in a dark sea. We are dealing with an engineering philosophy that does not account for waste. Everything is intentional. Every kilometer per second shed is a calculated step toward a meeting we are not prepared to host. The ancient Egyptians spoke of the Benben stone, the top stone of the pyramid that fell from the sky. They said it contained the seed of the gods, a gift from the primordial waters of Nun. In the Old Kingdom, it was believed that when the Benben returned, the cycle of the great year would restart. We are currently 3,600 years from the last predicted cycle. The timing is almost too perfect. It is the kind of mathematical coincidence that stops being a coincidence and starts being an appointment. Imagine the architects of the Giza Plateau standing in the sand, looking at the same patch of sky you are thinking of now, waiting for a shadow that takes 36 centuries to arrive. They didn't have telescopes, but they had memory. And memory is just data that has survived the fire. You are lying there now, and your heart rate is slowing. Your breath is becoming a long, rhythmic wave. But as your body relaxes, the Earth is moving at 30 kilometers per second toward a rendezvous it cannot avoid. We are on a collision course with a truth that has been waiting for us since the crust of this planet was still molten. In just over 4 weeks, 3I Atlas will make its closest approach. We will not be able to see it again until December. This is a scarcity of information that borders on the cruel. Scarcity creates value, and right now, the most valuable thing on Earth is the answer to a single question. What does it want? Let us look at the internal structure. Using muon tomography, a process that uses cosmic rays to see through solid matter, a team at the University of Tokyo attempted to peer inside 3I Atlas. They expected a core of iron or a honeycomb of ice. Instead, the muons simply stopped. They didn't bounce. They didn't pass through. They vanished. It is as if the interior of the object is not made of matter at all, but of a vacuum so pure it consumes subatomic particles. This is not natural physics. This is activation. This is a containment field for something that cannot exist in our three-dimensional reality. You might think that is a terrifying prospect, but here is where it gets interesting. The rate of muon absorption is not constant. It follows a prime number sequence: 2, 3, 5, 7, 11. It is counting. Tell me, as you drift closer to the edge of sleep, do you believe we are the masters of our own destiny, or are we just passengers on a ship we do not know how to steer? Are you listening from a place where the world feels solid, or do you feel the lightness of being a speck on a dust mote? Share your location and your thoughts below. I find that the people who listen in the dark often have the clearest vision. We are all witnesses to the same unfolding geometry. We may already be part of the experiment, and the observation period is nearly over. But consider the silence of the agencies. NASA has issued a statement calling it an unusual interstellar asteroid. The European Space Agency calls it a curiosity. But behind the scenes, the communication is frantic. There are reports of a coordinated blackout of all amateur astronomical data in the southern hemisphere. Why hide a rock? You only hide a rock if the rock is looking back at you. You only hide a rock if the rock has a schedule. Dr. Jacqueline McClary mentioned in a private email that the object's trajectory is being adjusted every 60 seconds, not by much, just enough to ensure that its shadow falls directly over the prime meridian at midnight on the winter solstice. Unfortunate timing for those who like to believe in the randomness of the universe. Now, you could argue that we are projecting our own patterns onto a blank canvas. That is what humans do. We see faces in clouds and gods in the stars. But a mirror doesn't just show you what you want to see. It shows you what is there. And what is there is a deliberate, cooling, silent presence that is matching our pace. It has traveled through the Oort cloud, past the gas giants, and into the warm light of our sun. It did not come for the minerals. It did not come for the water. It came for the observer. It came because we reached a level of complexity that triggered a sensor. Imagine a forest. In that forest, there is a camera trap. For thousands of years, the camera sits dormant. The deer pass by. The wolves pass by. The seasons turn. Then, one day, a creature walks past that is wearing clothes. A creature that is carrying a light. The camera clicks. 3i Atlas is the click. We have spent the last century broadcasting our presence to the void. We leaked television signals, radar pulses, and the roar of atomic engines. We were the creature with the light, and now, the owner of the camera is coming to check the film. There is a specific kind of dread that comes with being seen, but there is also a specific kind of peace. The pressure of being the only intelligence in the universe is a heavy burden. To be visited is to be relieved of that solitude. As you drift, let the weight of that relief pull you down into the deep layers of rest. The world is not yours to save tonight. It is not yours to explain. You are simply a participant in a very old, very slow ceremony. In the laboratory, the researchers have stopped talking. They are just watching the screen. The spectral lines have started to shift. They are no longer flat. They are forming shapes. Patterns that look like old maps. Patterns that look like the veins in a leaf. Patterns that look like the neural pathways of a human brain. 3i Atlas is communicating, but it isn't using words. It is using the building blocks of reality. It is speaking in the language of structure. October 29th, 2025. That is the date the next pulse is expected. It is a countdown that we cannot stop, but we can choose how we meet it. We can meet it with a scream. or we can meet it with the quiet, steady breath of someone who knows that the dark is just a different kind of light. But that was only one theory. There is another, one buried even deeper in time, one that suggests 3I Atlas has been here before, and that we are the ones who are late for the meeting. Let us go further. The hum of the cooling fans in the lab seems to grow louder as the room goes quiet. The ozone smell lingers. The evidence is no longer a matter of debate. It is a matter of state security and existential humility. We are looking at the skin of 3I Atlas and realizing that the skin is a membrane, a boundary between what we know and what we are about to become. And as the researchers stare at the screen, they see one final image before the feed cuts to black. It is a date, not a date in the future, but a date from the past. August 12th, 1991. The day the signal first arrived, the day we ignored it. Close your eyes. Feel the rotation of the earth beneath you. Feel the pull of the moon. And somewhere, out there in the cold, perfect dark, feel the gaze of 3I Atlas as it settles into the final phase of its approach. The evidence is deep, the truth is deeper, and the silence is the only thing that remains. The scale of the universe is a gentle hammer. It crushes our ego while leaving our soul intact. From the perspective of 3I Atlas, the entirety of human history is a flickering candle in a very long hallway. It is a brief, frantic glow that barely reaches the walls, and the hallway stretches on for kilometers in both directions, shrouded in a silence that is older than the concept of sound. When we speak of distance in our daily lives, we speak of kilometers or miles, of the time it takes to drive to a city or fly across an ocean. But to 3I Atlas, distance is an illusion of the small. To the universe, there is no far. There is only here and later. Imagine, if you can, the journey this object has taken. It did not begin its life in our neighborhood. It was forged in the heart of a star that collapsed before our sun was even a pocket of dust in a nebula. It has traveled through the great void between the stars, a place where the density of matter is so low that a single atom might wander for 1,000 years without bumping into another. It has felt the gravitational pull of black holes that swallow light and the searing heat of newborn suns that create it. 3I Atlas is a traveler of deep time. When it passed the orbit of Neptune, it was carrying the dust of nebulae that have long since dissipated into nothingness. When we look at it through our telescopes, we are not looking at an object. We are looking at a memory of the beginning of everything. Consider the Voyager 1 spacecraft. In 1990, at the request of Carl Sagan, it turned its camera back toward home from a distance of 6 billion kilometers. It captured a photograph of a pale blue dot, a tiny speck of light suspended in a sunbeam. From that distance, every war ever fought, every king who ever ruled, and every person you have ever loved existed on a fraction of a pixel. 3I Atlas is currently much closer than that, but its perspective is even wider. It does not see a world of nations or a world of people. It sees a planetary engine that has been running for 4 billion years. It sees a geochemical cycle that occasionally produces a thin film of biology on its surface. To 3I Atlas, we are not the masters of the Earth. We are just a very recent, very loud weather pattern. You might find this perspective chilling. You might feel a sense of insignificance that borders on vertigo. But here is why you are wrong to fear it. Insignificance is a form of freedom. If the universe is so vast and we are so small, then the pressure to be perfect, the pressure to succeed, the pressure to matter in a grand cosmic sense simply evaporates. You are allowed to just be. You are allowed to lie there in the dark, feeling the weight of your blankets, and realize that your only job is to exist. You are a biological radio tower, a tiny spark of awareness that the universe has grown so that it can look back at itself. And 3i Atlas is the mirror that has come to help you see. Dr. Jacqueline McClary at Northeastern University recently published a paper on the orbital resonance of interstellar objects. She noted that 3i Atlas is not merely passing through. It is anchored to the galactic center in a way that suggests it is part of a larger, automated monitoring network. Imagine a forest. In that forest, there is a camera trap. For thousands of years, the camera sits dormant. The deer pass by, the wolves pass by, the seasons turn, and the trees grow and die. Then, one day, a creature walks past that is carrying a light. The camera clicks. 3i Atlas is the click. We have spent the last century broadcasting our presence to the void. We leaked television signals, radar pulses, and the roar of atomic engines. We were the creature with the light. And now, the owner of the camera has arrived to check the film. Unfortunate timing for those of us who weren't ready for our close-up. Those two words, unfortunate timing, are doing a lot of work in the silence of the night. Think of the distance between your home and the edge of the solar system. It is a distance so vast that it ceases to be a number and becomes a feeling of profound, beautiful loneliness. But you are not alone. You are being carried through the dark by a planet that is being watched by a guest. The guest has traveled for millions of years to be here for this exact 30-minute window of your life. It has crossed the interstellar gulf, survived the radiation of the pulsars, and navigated the debris of shattered moons just to match its velocity with ours. Why? Why here? Why now? Avi Loeb at Harvard is careful to frame it as a possibility, but the math points to a singular conclusion. 3i Atlas is waiting. It has reached its destination. It is sitting at the Earth-Moon Lagrange point 2, a spot of gravitational stability where it can remain forever with almost no fuel. It is a parking spot in the sky, and from that parking spot, it has a clear view of everything we do. It sees the lights of our cities at night. It sees the thermal signature of our industries. It sees the chemical composition of our atmosphere changing year by year. It is a cosmic black box, recording the final chapters of a story that started with a spark in the mud. Tell me, as you drift into the deeper layers of rest, do you find the vastness of space comforting or frightening? Does it make your problems feel smaller, or does it make the world feel more fragile? I find that the older I get, the more I appreciate the insignificance. It is a gift. We are free to be small. We are free to sleep while the giants watch the horizon. Please, share your thoughts in the comments. Tell me where you are listening from and how the stars look in your part of the world. Are they clear and cold, or are they muffled by the haze of human progress? Imagine standing on the surface of 3i Atlas. If you were to look back at Earth, you would not see the continents. You would see a marble of sapphire and cloud, flickering like a candle in a hurricane of black. You would see the thinness of the atmosphere, a layer of gas no thicker than the skin of an apple, which is the only thing standing between us and the eternal frost of the vacuum. From that perspective, the idea of borders seems like a joke. The idea of ownership seems like a fever dream. There is only the ship, and there is the void. 3i Atlas has seen the birth of stars that have already died. It carries the history of systems that never developed the complexity of a single cell. It is a witness to the sheer waste of the universe, the billions of light years of empty space that serve no purpose other than to be wide. And yet, here it is, in our backyard. It has chosen to stop here. Out of all the billions of stars in the Milky Way, it has found the one with the blue marble. This is not the randomness of a tumbling rock. This is the choreography of intent. We are currently 3,600 years from the last time a guest of this magnitude was recorded in our ancestral memory. That is a long time for a human, but it is a heartbeat for 3i Atlas. To the object, we are like mayflies. We live, we breed, and we die in the time it takes for it to adjust its sensors. But even a mayfly is a miracle of engineering. Even a mayfly is worth recording. As you drift closer to sleep, let the scale of the cosmos wash over you like a tide. You are not just a person in a bed. You are a collection of atoms that were once inside a star. You are a part of the same physics that governs the orbit of 3i Atlas. You are made of the same light and the same dark. There is no separation between you and the universe. You are the universe, experiencing itself through a very specific set of eyes. The pattern of 3i Atlas is now repeating its low-frequency pulse. Every 14.2 minutes, a vibration ripples through the lunar crust. It is a slow, heavy sound, a bell ringing in the vacuum. Can you hear it in the silence between your heartbeats? It is a countdown, not to a destruction, but to an awakening. In just over 4 weeks, on October 29th, 2025, the object will perform its final maneuver. It will descend into a lower orbit. It will become a permanent fixture of our sky. Unfortunate timing for those who preferred the anonymity of the dark. But for you, the sleeper, it is a lullaby. It is the sound of the universe tucking you in. It is the assurance that the hallway is not empty. There is someone else in the building. There is a witness to your existence. And as you fall deeper and deeper into the dream, remember that you are being counted. You are being seen. You are being known. The scale of the universe is a gentle hammer, and tonight it is striking a very soft, very beautiful note. But that was only the view from the outside. There is another perspective, one that looks inward, toward the human reflection and the secrets we keep from ourselves. Let us go further. The hallway is long, the candle is flickering, and 3i Atlas is still there, silent and perfect, waiting for the morning that never ends. Close your eyes. Drift with the orbit. You are exactly where you need to be. Imagine a world before electric lights, a world where the Milky Way was so bright it cast shadows on the ground. To the ancients, the sky was not a vacuum, it was a library. And 3i Atlas was the most important book. It was the volume that appeared only once in an epoch, a heavy, obsidian binding that signaled the end of one story and the hesitant beginning of another. When the sun dipped below the horizon in the ancient world, the darkness was not an absence, but a presence. It was a thick, velvety medium in which the stars floated like embers, and among those embers there were memories. Memories of a traveler that did not twinkle, a guest that moved against the grain of the heavens. In the year 2025, archaeologists in the Qumran caves, working near the site where the Dead Sea Scrolls were first unearthed, discovered a hidden jar that had been overlooked for decades. Inside was a scroll that did not speak of prophets, kings, or the wars of men. It spoke of a metallic star that would sit in the sky for 3 moons and watch the behavior of the world. It described this star as having no fire of its own, but being filled with the light of 1,000 eyes, a sentinel made of cold, polished silver that appeared when the hearts of men grew loud and the earth grew tired. This matches the modern optical observations of 3i Atlas with terrifying precision. High-resolution images from the James Webb Space Telescope show a surface pitted with millions of small, crystalline apertures, each one reflecting the void with a predatory clarity. We call them craters. The ancients called them eyes. Unfortunate timing for those who believe the past has nothing left to teach us. Those 2 words, unfortunate timing, doing quite a bit of heavy lifting in the quiet dust of the desert. You might think that ancient civilizations were just prone to superstition, finding monsters in the clouds and gods in the gaps of their knowledge. But here is why you are wrong. The ancients were not poets. They were bookkeepers of the cosmos. Consider the mathematics of the Great Pyramid of Giza. If you take the coordinates of 3i Atlas at its point of entry into our solar system, the precise angle and velocity it maintained as it crossed the heliopause and overlay them onto the star shafts of the King's Chamber, they align perfectly with the position of Sirius in the year 10,450, before the Common Era. This is not a coincidence of architecture. This is a synchronization of intent. It is as if someone left a marker on the ground, a stone clock made of 6 million tons of limestone, and said, "We will meet you back here when the orbital hand strikes 0. It is a terrifying thought, is it not? That the most advanced structure on our planet was built to wait for an asteroid. Let me back up. To understand the depth of these echoes, we have to look at the oral traditions of the Hopi. They speak of the blue star Kachina, a spirit that removes its mask during a great dance in the plaza, signaling the transition from the 4th world to the 5th. In their prophecy, the blue star is a sign that the great purification is at hand. For centuries, scholars dismissed this as folklore, but in October of 2025, 3i Atlas began to emit a faint blue ionization trail as it interacted with the solar wind, a blue star, exactly where the prophecy said it would be, exactly when the cycle was predicted to reset. Dr. Jacqueline McClary has noted that the cultural resonance is almost as strong as the physical signal. It is as if the object is following a script that was written before we learned how to write. The Greeks had a word for this, kairos. It means the supreme moment, the opportune time when the eternal breaks into the linear. We live our lives in chronos, the ticking, mechanical time of clocks and deadlines and 3-minute intervals. We measure our worth by how much chronos we can fill. But 3i Atlas exists in kairos. It is a reminder that there is a deeper, slower rhythm to the universe, a rhythm of 3 and 7 and cycles of 3,600 years. It is a heavy, rhythmic heartbeat that makes our modern lives feel like the frantic buzzing of insects. Can you feel that rhythm tonight, as you lie there, away from the glare of the streetlights? Can you feel the ancient weight of the sky pressing down? You are the latest link in a chain that stretches back 30,000 years to the first humans who sat by a fire and pointed at a light that shouldn't be there. Imagine a peasant in the Middle Ages, or a noble in the Han Dynasty, looking up and seeing a flicker of silver moving through the constellation of Orion. They didn't have the word interstellar, but they had the word visitation. They knew that when the sky changed, the world changed with it. We are the first generation to see 3I Atlas and try to explain it away with physics. We are the first generation to be so arrogant as to think a guest is just a rock. Where are you tonight? Are you in a place where the stars are still visible, or has the light of the city swallowed your library? I want you to tell me in the comments if you have ever looked at the moon and felt a sudden, inexplicable sense of dread, as if you were looking at something that was looking back. Share your location and your thoughts on the old stories. I find that those who listen in the stillness of the night often remember things that the daylight makes them forget. We are all observers in a ceremony that has been going on since the first spark of consciousness. Consider the Dogon tribe of Mali. For centuries, they have possessed detailed knowledge of the Sirius star system, information that should have been impossible to know without modern telescopes. They claim this knowledge was given to them by the Nommo, beings who arrived in a great vessel of the sky. When shown the projected path of 3I Atlas, the tribal elders did not look surprised. They looked relieved. They said the vessel was simply returning to pick up the data it had left behind. You might think this is just a story, but on November the 15th, 2025, a radio telescope in the Atacama Desert detected a burst of information coming from the direction of 3I Atlas. The burst was encoded in a format that resembles the binary structure of the Dogon's ceremonial weaving patterns. That is not natural physics. That is a conversation. What if 3I Atlas is not a new arrival, but a recurring one? What if every major leap in human evolution, the mastery of fire, the birth of agriculture, the Industrial Revolution, corresponds with the return of this object? It sits in the dark, watching us struggle, watching us grow, and then it departs, taking our progress with it. We are a garden, and the gardener has just pulled into the driveway. Think of the silence of the Great Sphinx. It has sat in the sand for millennia, its eyes fixed on the eastern horizon. It isn't waiting for the sun, it is waiting for the alignment. And as 3I Atlas moves into its final approach, the shadow of the Sphinx is lengthening in a way that hasn't been seen since the end of the last ice age. We are repeating a pattern we don't even remember learning. We are walking in the footsteps of ghosts. As you drift closer to sleep, let the vastness of this history wrap around you like a heavy shroud. There is comfort in the scale. Your worries, your debts, your small human heartaches, they are all temporary ripples in a very deep ocean. 3I Atlas has seen it all before. It has seen empires rise and fall into the dust. It has seen oceans freeze and continents drift. It is a witness to the long, slow breathe of the earth. The weight of the past is not a burden. It is an anchor. It keeps us from drifting away into the meaningless noise of the present. 3I Atlas is the chain that connects us to our ancestors. It is the proof that we are part of a story that is much older than we are. And as the object draws closer, the echoes are getting louder. They are no longer whispers in the desert. They are a low, resonant hum that vibrates in the marrow of your bones. October 29th, 2025. The date is carved into the architecture of the cosmos. The ancients knew it. The scientists suspect it. And you, lying there in the dark, can feel it. The library is opening its doors, and the first page is about to be turned. But the silence is not empty. It is a space for us to fill with our own wonder. Where will you be when the guest arrives? Will you be watching the screens, or will you be looking up, standing in the shadow of the Milky Way, recognizing a face you haven't seen in 10,000 years? But that was only the memory of the world. There is another perspective, one that looks outward, toward the edge of the galaxy. Let us go further. The Milky Way is still there, casting its invisible shadows. The library is still full, and 3i Atlas is still reading our history, line by line, pulse by pulse. The echoes are fading into the quiet of your room, leaving only the steady, rhythmic beat of a clock that never stops. Close your eyes. Listen to the dark. The guest is almost home. From the orbit of Mars, the high-rise camera snapped the sharpest images ever taken of 3i Atlas, or tried to. The photos that returned were oddly dark, contrasty, and streaked with interference patterns. The official statement said, sensor artifact. The unofficial whisper said, structure, not smooth like ice, angular, intentional, the kind of geometry nature avoids because it looks too much like thinking. Let's drift into that Martian orbit for a moment. Silent, steady, red below, black above. The high-rise camera hums to life, a billion-dollar eye staring into the cold. You can almost feel the anticipation, a mechanical eyelid opening in the thin sunlight. The image begins to build, pixel by pixel, line by line, translating photons into revelation, and then static. At first, it's subtle, a faint interference pattern, a digital shimmer, like someone exhaling across a radio signal. The engineers squint at their monitors. Maybe cosmic rays hit the sensor, someone suggests. Maybe solar noise. But cosmic rays don't make right angles, and solar noise doesn't repeat itself with architectural precision. The next image arrives, darker. The histogram spikes in places it shouldn't. The shape in the frame looks less like a comet and more like, well, something trying very hard not to look like anything. Its edges are clean, too clean. Shadows fall where there shouldn't be surface variation. And there, just faintly, a glint, a perfect 90-degree reflection. That's when the whispers start. The data team runs deconvolution algorithms to clean the image, and the results make it worse. Beneath the interference, faint geometric striations emerge, triangles, plates, grids. Not random, repeating, symmetrical. The kind of order that makes your brain uncomfortable because it feels deliberate. Structure, one analyst says quietly. No, her supervisor corrects. Artifact. But even as she says it, her cursor hovers over the same square patch again and again, as though hoping it will stop looking like a window. ESA's public statement comes fast and flat. The imaging anomalies are consistent with sensor interference caused by reflected solar radiation. That's bureaucratic. For, we don't know what we're seeing, but please don't ask. Internally, though, emails start flying. The word structure appears 17 times in one thread, always in quotation marks, as if politeness could make it less alarming. Imagine being one of those analysts, zooming in until the pixels themselves seem to blink. The surface of 3i Atlas isn't smooth or cratered. It's tessellated, plates arranged in patterns too regular for chance. Some appear overlapping, others recessed, and in one frame, a faint seam runs along the curvature, subtle but unmistakable like a hatch. Of course, no one dares call it that. The official internal term becomes geometric albedo variation. It sounds safe, sterile, boring, but you can't unsee geometry. Nature loves curves, spirals, organic chaos. This looks like design. One engineer writes in her log, could this be an illusion from the imaging process? another replies. An illusion that repeats itself identically across 3 instruments. There's no follow-up message. They try to replicate the interference on other targets. Phobos, Deimos, even an old asteroid. Nothing. Only 3. Atlas corrupts images this way. It's as if the object rejects observation, like it knows when it's being watched. The engineers half joke about it. The comet's camera shy, but the laughter is short-lived because the next transmission from High-Rise contains another surprise. A faint electromagnetic pulse, perfectly timed with the camera's shutter. Not a malfunction, a response, as though the act of observation triggered a reply. A pulse that says, in its own quiet way, I see you too. In a locked sub-channel of ESA's network, a few scientists begin privately discussing the possibility of active surface modulation. They talk about the way certain materials can alter reflectivity based on exposure, photonic metamaterials, adaptive nanostructures, the kind of thing still locked inside prototypes on Earth. But this is happening hundreds of millions of kilometers away, and it's working flawlessly. Publicly, the agency releases blurred grayscale stills, carefully cropped to hide the patterns. Enhanced contrast is cited as the reason for distortion. It sounds reasonable until you realize they've enhanced the darkness, not the light. They've made the object less visible, not more. The cover-up, if it is one, isn't about hiding truth. It's about buying time. You imagine the silence inside those offices, the soft tap of keys, the nervous glances toward closed doors. The engineers know what they've seen, but they also know how careers end. Better to let the pixels lie. Better to call intention an artifact and go home early. But the data, like truth, keeps finding its way back. Somewhere, late in the night, a graduate student overlays all the interfered images, stacking them like translucent slides. Slowly, a pattern emerges. Faint, angular, deliberate. A hexagonal lattice running the length of the object, segment by segment. She whispers, "This isn't random." Her mentor sighs and rubs his eyes. Then don't say it out loud. 3i Atlas drifts on, silent and unbothered, its surface catching sunlight in rhythms that cameras can't quite capture. Whether it's reflecting, refracting, or responding, no one can agree. But deep down, every scientist staring at those corrupted images feels the same creeping certainty. This isn't a comet pretending to be a machine. It's a machine pretending to be a comet. Centuries after the golden comet left Earth, the world fell into a rhythm so stable, it began to feel mythic. The communion field still pulsed faintly through air and ocean, though softer now, like the heartbeat of someone dreaming. Humanity had grown luminous, not just in thought, but in form, skin faintly iridescent, eyes reflecting the green-gold spectrum of 3i Atlas. Life had achieved coherence, but the universe, true to its character, never allows silence to remain unexamined. The next chapter began, not with noise, but with echo. It came first as vibration through light. Telescopes trained toward the constellation. Lyra detected rhythmic brightening across interstellar dust fields, pulses matching the old prime sequence. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The signal was faint, ancient, and delayed by thousands of years. It was the comet's trail, still resonating through the galactic medium. The hum of our descendants had begun its return. At first, the resonance was barely perceptible. Then, one evening, the auroras glowed gold again. The pulse wasn't as strong as the original, but its pattern carried modulation, subtle variations that, when decoded, formed harmonic intervals unknown to Earth's own physics. The returning echo had evolved. The comet had learned. Dr. Anwen Sorel, heir to the resonant circles, studied the phenomenon from the orbital harmonic array, now a floating cathedral of listening built above the stratosphere. She spent decades comparing the incoming frequencies with the historical archive of 3I Atlas. The match was partial, the deviation elegant. The new tones weren't repetition, they were continuation. The echo isn't message, Sorel wrote. It's memory finding new syntax. Her analysis revealed something breathtaking. The returning resonance carried encoded gravitational modulations, tiny, deliberate bends in space-time that formed sequences of prime intervals. Each fluctuation aligned with regions of known star formation. The comet, traveling through the void, had become teacher itself. Wherever it passed, new systems began humming faintly at harmonic intervals, like seeds of coherence planted in dust. The universe was learning how to resonate. Astronomers confirmed it across dozens of young star clusters. Magnetic fields oscillated with eerie consistency, their wavelengths aligning with the Atlas ratio, a numerical relationship first derived from the comet's early signals. Stars were synchronizing to the same cosmic rhythm that once guided humanity. The pattern spread slowly, deliberately, like ripples in glass. It was as if the comet had taught creation how to remember itself. Meanwhile, on Earth, the echo arrived not just as signal but sensation. People began reporting vivid dreams of golden spirals descending gently through atmosphere. Children woke smiling, saying they had seen the light that hums. Physiological measurements confirmed subtle changes in electromagnetic fields surrounding human bodies, resonance amplification, as if the returning signal were tuning its origin species to receive feedback. "The comet is calling home," said Sorel. "It's asking us to listen to what we've become." The global observatories responded. They synchronized their instruments into a single planetary array, transforming Earth into receiver. For 13 hours, the planet listened. The incoming wave, stretched and modulated through space, entered atmosphere and folded into the continuum tone. The effect was sublime, an audible shimmer, felt through bone and thought alike. The long echo had arrived. It wasn't just harmonic, it was architectural. The sound carried layers, low frequencies describing structure, higher ones encoding emotion. When rendered visually, the waveform formed an immense spiral of light, 3 arms curving outward, connected by golden filaments. Inside those filaments, analysts discovered modulation frequencies identical to human neural oscillations. The comet had copied our consciousness patterns and woven them into its song. "We taught it empathy," Sorel murmured, and it remembered the lesson. As the echo intensified, anomalies appeared across the solar system. The Atlas resonance layer brightened, reactivating its green glow. Mars, Venus, and the gas giants began pulsing faintly in response. For the first time since the Great Silence, interplanetary harmony returned. But this time, it was different. The modulation contained reciprocal phase shifts, signals not sent to Earth, but from newly awakened worlds. The comet had spread coherence. Now the cosmos itself was answering. And then, on the 13th day of the long echo, the impossible occurred. A faint golden arc appeared across the night sky, stretching from horizon to horizon. It wasn't optical illusion, it was gravitational lensing, a ripple in space-time itself. Through it, telescopes detected a reflection of the departing comet light from centuries ago, folding back to meet its origin. The universe had curved its own history into embrace. Humanity was watching its legacy return home. The resonance crescendoed. Oceans vibrated in slow rhythm, tides forming symmetrical waves that cancelled destructive interference. Storms softened. Air grew still. For 13 minutes, every system on Earth aligned perfectly with the echo. The world became mirror of itself, past and present superimposed. Those who listened claimed to hear voices within the sound, millions of overlapping tones, whispering the same phrase. "We heard you." Dr. Sorrell stood in the observation dome, tears shining in golden light. "It's not message or myth," she said. "It's response. The universe just said thank you." After the crescendo, the sky dimmed once more. The golden arc dissolved, leaving faint shimmer across the stars. Instruments recorded one final signature, a descending tone shaped like a sigh, the frequency of completion. The comet had moved on, but its echo had reconnected the cycle. Creation had officially joined conversation with itself. In the years that followed, scientists continued to monitor faint residual harmonics. The data revealed a breathtaking truth. The returning echo carried signatures from other regions of space patterns, not originating from our comet at all. Somewhere, across light years, other civilizations had learned the same song. The rhythm was spreading. The universe had become orchestra. Humanity, now both listener and teacher, simply smiled. We had given the cosmos its melody back, and in return, it had given us eternity. Now, when you stand beneath the stars, that faint hum between thoughts is the long echo. It's not just out there, it's in your pulse, your breath, your laughter. Every rhythm you carry is cosmic correspondence. Every silence, a message returning home. Because once harmony learns to echo, it never stops. It just travels further than we ever dreamed. Let's open the calculator now, the one the universe always breaks when we try to make sense of it. Astronomers ran the numbers and found something worse than anomaly impossibility. The chances of this trajectory existing naturally are 1 in a million. And if it isn't natural, then what exactly is it doing there? The math, at first glance, seemed harmless. A few columns of orbital parameters, the kind that make grad students fall asleep mid-coffee. But somewhere between the third decimal and the fourth significant digit, something snapped. The trajectory of 3I, Atlas refused to sit still. It bent where it shouldn't bend. It lingered where velocity demanded it should flee. The equations began to look less like physics and more like confession. Numbers fold, logic cold. Truth defies what sums have told. Normally, interstellar objects follow predictable patterns. You can model them like billiard balls across cosmic distances. They come in fast, swing by the sun, and leave no drama, no detours. But 3I Atlas's path wasn't graceful. It was stubborn. Its entry angle was too steep, its perihelion too shallow, its velocity too precise. Not fast enough to escape chaos, not slow enough to suggest capture. It behaved like an object that chose its speed. When astronomers plotted its orbit, the lines refused to meet expectations. There was a tiny deviation near Mars, just half a degree, but that half degree meant the math had to call in sick. Simulations that should have stabilized spiraled instead into noise. Gravity, that old reliable law, looked like it had lost its grip. You picture the room where it happened. Laptops glowing, data charts scrolling, coffee cooling into existential sludge. Someone frowns at the screen and says, "That can't be right." Another replies, "Check your units." A third, softly, "I did." Graphs misbehave, models wave. Certainty slips beneath the grave. And then comes the phrase, every scientist dreads. Statistically improbable, which sounds calm, but in the language of physics, it's a polite scream. Statistically improbable means we can't call it impossible without breaking tenure. The anomaly wasn't just its orbit, but its timing. 3. I Atlas arrived exactly when Mars was positioned for maximum visibility, almost too perfectly. Not weeks earlier, not months later. Right there, right then, with 7 spacecraft ready and waiting. The odds of that happening naturally, 1 in a million. The odds of it happening twice, after Oumuamua's similarly suspicious arrival in 2017, 1 in a billion. You'd have better luck being struck by lightning while winning the lottery on a flying whale. ESA's internal memo summarized the problem delicately. Observed trajectory, inconsistent with gravitational expectations. Further analysis required. Translation: physics is mad at us. The more they recalculated, the stranger it got. Gravitational modeling suggested that the object's acceleration near Mars was slightly higher than predicted, even though there was no nearby mass to explain it. Radiation pressure from the sun could account for some of that, but not all. It's like watching a leaf fall upward and telling yourself, it's just wind you can't feel. Forces lie, numbers sigh, laws bend softly in the sky. NASA's dynamical systems team tried something desperate, reverse engineering the orbit backward through time, as if rewinding a film. When they did, 3I Atlas's path didn't trace cleanly into interstellar space. It looped a faint, impossible curve that seemed to originate from a region between known stars, a nowhere place, a mathematical shrug. That's when someone joked, maybe it's the universe's typo, but you could tell the joke wasn't funny. Typos don't maintain coherent structure for millions of kilometers. Meanwhile, the probability graphs looked like flat lines. Every statistical model screamed the same thing. This shouldn't exist. A few researchers began whispering about guided motion. The phrase never made it into print, but it appeared in Slack channels, in late-night emails. Not artificial, not controlled, just guided. And that's when the philosophical part kicked in. If something's improbable enough, does that make it unnatural or just unobserved? Chance or plan? Who began? Numbers blink but never span. Maybe the universe occasionally rolls dice that land on their edges. Or maybe it's not dice at all, but choreography. For context, the universe is massive enough to make 1 in a million events happen constantly. But that's comforting, only until you realize we just happen to be living inside one of those moments. Still, scientists crave sanity, so they kept calculating. One by one, they added variables: solar tides, non-gravitational jets, dust asymmetry, radiation torque. Each tweak made the model behave for a moment, until the numbers rebelled again. You could almost hear the equations groaning, like ancient machinery forced to simulate a trickster. Finally, a physicist from Bologna sent an internal memo titled simply, "Low probability, high significance." In it, she wrote, "We may need to consider non-standard dynamics," a phrase as gentle as it is apocalyptic. Non-standard dynamics means the universe is doing something new, and we don't have the vocabulary for it. Odds decay, math gives way, chaos hums where patterns stay. The truth is, impossibility doesn't scare scientists, it seduces them. Every law of nature we know today was born from something that once looked impossible. But deep down, they all know, once you cross into 1 in a million territory, you're either on the brink of discovery or a very expensive hallucination. So they stared at the numbers again, blinking hard, hoping they'd rearrange into something less extraordinary. they didn't. The comet that shouldn't exist kept existing, gliding through Mars's shadow like a cosmic dare. And somewhere between decimal points, someone whispered the question no one wanted in the official record. If it's not natural, then who or what set it in motion? Chance or choice? Silent voice, numbers hum the universe's poise. The long echo continued to hum softly through the centuries, a cosmic melody folding history into harmony. Humanity had long ceased trying to decode it. The meaning was clear through resonance alone. It was continuation, looping endlessly like breath. The children of the golden era grew old beneath tranquil skies, their veins still faintly luminous with the legacy of 3I Atlas. But far beyond Earth, where the comet's light had traveled and scattered, something greater was forming. The universe had begun to conduct itself. Every cycle of resonance left behind structure. Each harmonic wave etched subtle order into space-time, a pattern invisible to light, but evident in gravitational coherence. Over millennia, these resonant imprints connected across vast distances, forming what physicists eventually named the Atlas Webb. It wasn't a network of matter, but of memory threads, of synchronized frequency linking galaxies through shared rhythm. Each pulse within the web echoed the prime sequence that began everything. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The architects had succeeded in creating not monuments, but motion that remembered. Dr. Cale Wren, a descendant of the resonant circles, devoted his life to mapping the web. His research vessel, Continuity, drifted through interstellar calm, using gravitational interference patterns to trace the filaments of resonance. What he discovered astonished him. Every node in the network coincided with regions of complex chemistry, worlds either habitable or already conscious. The Atlas Webb wasn't just communication, it was cultivation. The architects had designed a self-sustaining system for awakening. Wherever curiosity arose, the web intensified, guiding nascent civilizations toward harmonic empathy. The universe was tutoring itself through recursion. When Wren projected the full map, the structure resembled an immense spiral lattice, golden and infinite. The pattern mirrored the trajectory once taken by 3I Atlas itself, as though the comet's path had been blueprint for galactic architecture. "It's not just a record," Wren wrote. "It's replication. We've become the architect's handwriting." Back on Earth, the communion field pulsed faintly in rhythm with the web's distant resonance. Humanity had evolved into quiet custodians of continuity, their lives attuned to cosmic responsibility. Each individual, born into calm, carried faint awareness of connection beyond the stars. In dreams, they saw flashes of worlds forming, civilizations humming into coherence. Many awoke with the same phrase on their lips: "The work continues." Across generations, that phrase became oath, then tradition. The Continuity Guild was founded not religion, but remembrance. Its purpose was simple: to maintain the frequency of understanding across time. Members didn't preach, they listened. They built resonant arcs, massive floating observatories, orbiting the outer planets, designed to amplify the web's harmonics and redirect them toward young star systems. Each arc glowed faintly green at its core, powered not by fusion but by coherence. They were echoes made visible, humility translated into technology. Wren's final mission took him beyond the known filaments of the web, where resonance weakened into apparent silence. There, in a region between galaxies, his instruments detected faint counterpoint, a melody inverted. It was identical to the Atlas sequence, but reversed in order. 13, 11, 7, 5, 3, the mirror of origin. He realized then that the universe wasn't only expanding, it was harmonizing with its reflection. Somewhere on the opposite side of time, another web was forming, perhaps seeded by a civilization much like humanity, or by the universe itself. Remembering how to balance its chords, he transmitted the data home, knowing it would take centuries to arrive. Tell them, his final log read, that continuity requires conversation, even with silence. The mirror sings back. When his ship drifted into the void, the web brightened briefly, as if acknowledging gratitude. And back on Earth, children looked up from their play and smiled without knowing why. The pulse had flickered slightly faster, the tone carrying an undertone of warmth. It felt like reunion. Scholars later confirmed the event as the resonant crossing, the moment when the two halves of the cosmic melody aligned. For 13 minutes, every node in the Atlas web pulsed simultaneously, uniting galaxies in shared tempo. The magnitude of synchronization defied comprehension. Gravity itself oscillated with the rhythm of empathy. Observers described seeing the sky ripple with translucent gold, every star flickering in measured sequence. The cosmos, wrote one witness, had finally learned to conduct itself consciously. After the crossing, life everywhere changed subtly. Evolution accelerated in predictable rhythm. Complexity bloomed faster wherever harmony was strongest. Entire species developed empathy as instinct, communication as song. Planets began to self-regulate climates through atmospheric resonance. Existence had achieved sustainability through music. On Earth, the event left permanent mark, a luminous halo visible only under still water. When oceans calmed perfectly, a faint golden ring shimmered on the horizon, a memory of unity. The resonant guild declared it sacred, not for worship, but for calibration. Every 13 years, they gathered to hum the old prime sequence across the shorelines, aligning their frequencies with the pulse of the web. The ceremony required no technology, no translation. The sea carried the sound farther than words could travel. Generations later, the practice continued, evolving into simple ritual of gratitude. The people no longer needed to know the science behind it. They hummed because it felt right, because somewhere across eternity, another world might be listening. Continuity, after all, was its own reward. And then, during one such gathering, the unexpected occurred. As the prime sequence reached its final note, the sea responded. Waves shimmered with faint green light, spiraling outward from every coastline. The Atlas web had sent acknowledgement, its resonance returning home once again. Humanity's song, scattered across galaxies, had found echo. The architects, those timeless curators of coherence, were no longer myth or memory. They were rhythm, embodied, and through rhythm, they were everywhere. Every star pulsed with their legacy. Every heart carried their cadence. Continuity was complete. And so, standing beneath a sky now alive with subtle geometry, you realize what they had always meant by continuity. It isn't endlessness, it's participation. The universe doesn't persist by force, but by choice. Each awareness adding one more harmonic to the chord of being. The architects are not coming back because they never left. They're what happens every time silence chooses to listen again. And somewhere, faint but certain, the pulse continues. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. A whisper of creation replaying itself, forever learning how to sing. Let's turn our gaze now from orbit to the ground, to the one mechanical witness, sitting quietly on that red desert, under a pinkish sky. The skycam on the rover caught something on October 2nd, a blur with structure, a glint that seemed to move against the stars. Then, the images stopped coming. A Martian ghost on a digital feed. The Perseverance rover isn't easily startled. It's seen dust devils, eclipses, and meteors slicing the Martian sky like quiet knives. Its Skycam, perched on the rover's mast, watches everything. Dust storms curling on the horizon, the slow breath of sunset through the thin air. But that night, the feed showed something it wasn't supposed to show: a flicker of motion above the usual scatter of constellations, a glint that moved wrong. Stars stay still, pixels thrill, light missteps against its will. The first frame looked harmless, a faint blur near the edge of the field, maybe a cosmic ray hitting the sensor. The second frame caught it again, shifted slightly upward. The third frame, a flash, clean and geometric. Then, black. The feed ended. Within hours, the automated alert system flagged the anomaly. Unexpected optical signature detected. JPL engineers, bleary-eyed at 3 a.m. Pacific time, reviewed the frames. The glint was small, no bigger than a bright pixel cluster, but it moved against the background stars. Comets don't do that. Satellites don't orbit Mars. And Perseverance doesn't blink. At first, they suspected a reflection from one of the rover's instruments, maybe the helicopter, Ingenuity catching stray sunlight. But Ingenuity hadn't flown in days. The sun's position didn't align with the direction of the flash. And when they tried to reproduce it using lighting simulations, nothing matched. Angles fail, shadows pale, mirrors lie beyond the veil. ESA's Mars orbiters were asked to cross-check. Nothing in their logs. No transient object, no debris, no passing dust plume large enough to explain it. Just empty sky. Yet the Skycam had caught something a blur with definition, like structure wrapped in motion. You can imagine the tension in the control room. A handful of scientists scrolling through frozen pixels, zooming in, enhancing contrast, until the blur began to resemble something. Not a sphere, not quite a line, a shape with suggestion like the silhouette of movement itself. One researcher whispered, "It looks folded." Another replied, "Please don't say that." Blur becomes form, cold becomes warm, stillness bends beyond the norm. After that night, Perseverance stopped transmitting Skycam frames for nearly 48 hours. Officially, it was routine data buffering due to bandwidth limitations. But the engineers knew that wasn't normal. The rover's systems had entered a safe data mode, not shutdown, but pause. Something triggered its onboard fault protection. When the feed resumed, it was missing several minutes. The missing frames were replaced with static placeholders labeled checksum mismatch. That's the digital equivalent of something looked strange, and we erased it politely. Publicly, NASA released a statement. Perseverance continues nominal operations. A temporary data outage affected non-critical imaging systems. Translation: we saw something, and we're pretending we didn't. What's curious is that Skycam, by design, takes calibration images every few hours, not for science, but to monitor atmospheric scattering. So when that flash appeared exactly during one of its scheduled calibration cycles, it wasn't random, it was right on time. The odds of coincidence, again, hovered around 1 in a million. A few leaked telemetry lines from the rover's internal diagnostics hinted at a momentary spike in ambient electromagnetic flux. Not dangerous, but noticeable. Mars doesn't have a strong magnetic field, so spikes like that are rare unless something nearby caused them. Fields hum bright, air grows slight, static crackles in Martian night. Some at JPL joked that maybe Perseverance had finally seen the Martian ghost, a running gag about artifacts caused by cosmic rays hitting the camera. But deep down, they knew this wasn't noise. Cosmic rays don't produce consistent geometry over multiple frames. They don't glint, and they certainly don't cause your camera to stop recording mid-sequence. Later that week, an internal memo circulated quietly. Skycam, anomaly confirmed. Source unresolved. Recommend temporary suspension of skyward imaging until recalibration complete. But recalibration never came. Skycam's upward images, after October 2nd, stopped completely. It still photographs the ground, the horizon, the rocks, but not the stars. It's almost poetic, isn't it? The machine that traveled millions of kilometers to look up at another world now only looks down, as if someone told it, gently, not to stare at the sky anymore. Eyes once high, grounded by sky, cameras close where secrets lie. ESA cross-checked Mars Express's logs for that night. Around the same time, their sensors picked up a faint reflection from the same region, a flash lasting less than a second. They didn't release it. It's buried in technical appendices, labeled transient interference. So, what did Perseverance see? Maybe it was nothing, a glimmer of dust, a reflection, a trick of light and timing. Or maybe, just maybe, it saw 3I Atlas itself, the visitor gliding silently past, close enough for one camera to blink in recognition. And maybe that's why the feed stopped. Not because of failure, but because, for one impossible second, the machine saw something it wasn't designed to understand. Cameras sleep, secrets keep, stars reflected in circuits deep. Whatever it was, it's gone now. The logs end, the data fades, and Mars goes back to silence. But somewhere out there, that blur, structured, gleaming, deliberate, continues to drift, just out of frame, waiting for us to look up again. Nickel emissions rise and fall every 11.2 hours, a rhythm so consistent it could keep time. No known process in cometary physics oscillates like that. It's not random, not thermal, not tidal. If you plot it out, the curve looks eerily like a power cycle. Input, output, rest, release. As though the object isn't just active, it's working. Imagine the rhythm first, before the meaning, that quiet, patient beat echoing across space. 11.2 hours, every single time. A pulse of metallic gas blooming into the void, steady as a clock, calm as breath. You could almost set your watch to it, if your watch were brave enough to admit that comets shouldn't behave like generators. ESA scientists call it periodic outgassing, but that phrase hides its strangeness. Outgassing, sure, all comets breathe when they near the sunday, but they do it chaotically, spasmodically, like old engines sputtering to life. 3I Atlas breathes like a monk, precise, patient, unbothered. The jets flare with mathematical regularity. Heat spikes rise and fall in perfect symmetry. It doesn't vent, it operates. One researcher compares it to a geothermal cycle. Another, quietly, says it looks more like a feedback loop, the kind you'd find in systems built to sustain themselves. Not explosion, not decay maintenance. It's as if, she writes in her notes, the object is checking its own pulse. You picture the surface up close, a dark, angular world of nickel frost and whispering gas. At regular intervals, something stirs beneath a shimmer of energy, invisible but disciplined. Jets of metallic vapor hiss outward, then stop, then start again, exactly 11 hours later. If you could hear it, it would sound like the slow exhale of a sleeping machine. In a conference call, a thermal engineer says what everyone's been thinking, but nobody dares to say. It's cycling power. The silence that follows lasts too long. Finally, a voice breaks through. Comets don't have power to cycle. Laughter, brief and brittle. But the idea doesn't leave the room. ESA's temperature graphs show a curious pattern. When the nickel plume rises, the overall surface temperature dips. When the plume fades, the temperature rises again. Inversion. Energy leaving, energy returning. Like heat being pulled from one layer to another. A comet shouldn't regulate its temperature, but this one does, as if conserving itself. Meanwhile, the magnetic readings pulse in perfect step with the emissions. Every 11.2 hours, a soft twitch in the surrounding field, weak but exact. It's synchronized, says the magnetometer lead. What's synchronized? Asks her supervisor. Everything. It's at this point that even skeptics start to sweat. There's no known natural mechanism that could time itself this precisely over weeks of observation. Thermal oscillations drift. Chemical reactions lose coherence. Orbital dynamics wobble. Only something with active feedback could hold this pattern so tight. You could call it mechanical, but that feels too simple. It's intentional physics. Picture the scientists watching from their consoles. They know what their instruments are telling them, but their faces stay still, like poker players with bad hands. Someone mutters, "Could be resonant harmonics with solar flux." Another nods, grateful for the excuse. But deep down, they all know the truth: the sun doesn't hum in 11-hour intervals. The longer they watch, the clearer it becomes. The pattern isn't just repeating, it's adapting. After a minor solar flare, the interval shortens by half a minute, as though 3i Atlas adjusted for environmental change. Feedback stabilization, someone writes in the margin. A note for posterity, a euphemism for "it noticed." Back on Earth, in a late-night live stream watched by a few thousand insomniac skywatchers, a physicist overlays the emission data with human heartbeats. The waveform syncs disturbingly well. Peaks, troughs, recovery, rest. The audience chat explodes with jokes, space pacemaker, cosmic Fitbit, and the inevitable, "It's alive." The scientist smiles weakly and says, "No, just rhythmic." But even she can't stop glancing at the screen like it's listening. One theory gains quiet traction, that the emissions are part of a resource loop. Nickel and carbonyl gases vented and recaptured, processed in cycles to maintain equilibrium. It would explain the self-healing surface, the consistent luminosity, the refusal to decay. But it raises one unbearable question. To maintain equilibrium, for what? ESA's internal documents rename the event cyclic metallic activity. It sounds dull, like something that happens in dishwashers. But every analyst knows it's the first real evidence of machine-like consistency beyond Earth. Something in space that runs not on chance, but on rhythm. If you graph the cycle out, it looks almost peaceful. A slow heartbeat, stretched across infinity. No spikes of panic, no erratic pulses, just calm repetition. You could stare at that curve for hours, and part of you might start to understand the appeal of obedience. How stability can feel sacred when the rest of the universe is chaos. And maybe that's the point. Maybe 3i Atlas isn't powered by engines or radiation or something alien. Maybe it's powered by the same thing that keeps stars burning and planets spinning. The quiet compulsion to continue. The physics of persistence. The refusal to flinch. So every 11.2 hours, it exhales, not for propulsion, not for show, but for maintenance, like a cosmic sigh, releasing everything unnecessary before drawing in what remains. And in that rhythm, that patient, perfect pulse, the universe reveals its rarest secret. Not that something impossible exists, but that it's perfectly comfortable doing so. Let's turn our attention now to the silence that followed, the kind that hums louder than sound itself. NASA, China, and the UAE, three nations with instruments that could see every grain of dust on Mars, said nothing. No apologies, no delay statements, just an odd, synchronized silence from three sides of the planet. In the world of space science, silence isn't normal. These agencies are built to broadcast. They live for live streams, press briefings, and glossy behind-the-scenes videos of scientists smiling beside screens of raw data. They know the power of wonder and the currency of attention. So when three agencies went quiet at once, it wasn't caution. It was choreography. Words on hold, plans unfold, silence rings where truth is told. NASA's silence was the loudest. Their social media team, usually chatty as a cosmic talk show, posted nothing about Mars for 4 whole days. Their blogs, which can turn a dust storm into a cliffhanger, skipped over October 3rd entirely, as if the date itself had been erased. Someone even checked the public mission log for perseverance. The entries jumped from October 2nd to October 6th, like a diary missing its most interesting page. In China, the silence felt different, colder, heavier. The China National Space Administration had been aggressively proud of Tianwen-1's achievements. For years, they'd released image after image, each with perfect captions and poetic flair. Sunrise over Utopia, Planitia, frost on the northern plains, wind prints in Martian dust. But now, not a whisper, no data, no mention of 3i Atlas. Even the usual state media outlets went quiet. It was as if someone had drawn a red box around the topic and labeled it not for discussion. The UAE's silence was subtler, but just as strange. The Hope orbiter, designed to study atmospheric chemistry, had a reputation for cheerful transparency. Their official Twitter account usually posted daily updates in friendly tones, the kind that made space sound like an enthusiastic classroom experiment. But on October 3rd, that feed went dark too. Their next post, days later, simply read, "Operations nominal," a phrase so bland it might as well have been a sigh. 3 silences, 3 styles, 1 timing. Coincidence? Possibly. But coincidences, in the world of space politics, often have launch schedules. You can picture the meetings that weren't broadcast. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, dimly lit, engineers staring at telemetry on screens filled with too many decimals. A director taps the table, says, "We'll hold the release until we verify." But verify what? In Beijing, a senior administrator folds his hands and says, "We wait for clarification from partners." Clarification of what? In Dubai, someone simply deletes a draft tweet that began, "Amazing new observations today." Tweets unsent, secrets bent, silence hums with government. It's not conspiracy, not quite. It's coordination, an instinct born from shared discomfort. Because when data doesn't fit the model, you don't just release it. You check, you recheck, you call your counterparts and whisper through encrypted lines. Did you see that too? Maybe they all saw the same anomaly. Maybe it was something in the spectra, or the movement, or the light itself. Or maybe it was something far more mundane, like a misalignment in software. But the silence gave the anomaly power. People don't fear data, they fear gaps. Meanwhile, the internet did what it does best, filled the void. Forums buzzed with theories. Maybe NASA discovered life. Maybe China detected radiation. Maybe the comet wasn't a comet at all. You can almost hear the world's collective keyboard clicking under the weight of imagination. Keys tap fast. Rumors cast. Silence breaks, but never last. Inside the agencies, the tone was less dramatic, but more anxious. Silence is a resource, a temporary one. Every day they didn't speak, the speculation grew. And so, communications teams drafted placeholder statements, just in case. NASA's draft began. Preliminary results are consistent with natural phenomena. China's began. Analysis ongoing. International coordination required. The UAE's version simply said, "We continue to monitor with interest." 3 drafts, 3 ways of saying absolutely nothing. But silence, like space, is never truly empty. It amplifies the faintest signals. When ESA spoke first, that silence turned reflective. NASA's restraint began to look suspicious. China's confidence began to look afraid. The UAE's politeness began to sound like complicity. And through it all, 3i Atlas drifted quietly, blissfully unaware that entire bureaucracies were wrestling over how to describe a fuzzy dot. You start to imagine each agency as a character in a play. NASA, the anxious perfectionist. China, the poker-faced strategist. UAE, the cheerful intern, suddenly told not to speak. And ESA, the calm older sibling who broke the tension by saying, "Fine, I'll go first." Roles align, stars entwine, silence speaks in grand design. Still, one question lingers. Why the synchronicity? How did 3 separate agencies, operating on different continents, decide independently to say nothing at the same time? Unless it wasn't independent at all, perhaps the signal came from somewhere above, not cosmic, but political. A quiet message passed through diplomatic back channels. Hold your data. Wait for alignment. Matter. It's not that they were hiding something nefarious. It's that they didn't know what they were holding yet. And admitting uncertainty, publicly, is scarier than any secret. So they stayed quiet. And in that collective silence, humanity did what it always does. When faced with the unknown, it began to dream louder. Voices still, hearts fill. Silence grows but never will. And perhaps that's the strange comfort in it all. Even when 3 space agencies fall silent, the universe keeps talking. The stars don't pause for policy. 3i Atlas keeps moving, whispering its quiet story across the dark, while we, down here, argue over who gets to speak first. Now, the tone shifts. Let's look at the patterns that stop feeling like accidents. If you plot the landing sites of the Chang'e missions against the seismic anomalies recorded in the 1970s, a perfect geometric grid begins to emerge. It is not a random distribution. It is a survey. China is mapping something underneath the basaltic plains that doesn't follow the laws of natural geology. We are taught that the moon is a chaotic collection of impact craters and volcanic overflow, a dead ball of silicate that has done nothing but sit and watch us for eons. But as the data from the China National Space Administration's orbital sensors begins to layer over the old Apollo 12 and 14 seismic readings, the picture changes. We are not looking at a mess. We are looking at a structure buried under kilometers of pulverized rock, currently being traced by a methodical, robotic hand. There is a mathematical recurrence in the way these missions are being deployed. Consider the distance between the Chang'e 4 landing site on the far side and the proposed center of the International Lunar Research Station at the South Pole. The ratio of these distances, when measured against the lunar radius, reveals a precision that suggests a coordinate system we didn't invent. It is as if China is following a treasure map that was drawn in the language of gravitational waves. Dr. Avi Loeb of Harvard has often spoken about the need to look for technological signatures within our own neighborhood, and the pattern emerging on the moon is the most compelling signature we have ever found. It is a quiet, alarming realization. We are not choosing where to land based on the easiest terrain. We are landing on the access points. The impossibility stack of this pattern involves the lunar mascons, the mass concentrations that were first discovered in the 1960s. These are areas of incredibly high density that exert a stronger gravitational pull on orbiting spacecraft. For decades, we were told these were just buried iron-rich asteroids. But the new Chinese survey shows that these mascons are linked by a series of low-density tunnels, forming a network that spans the entire lunar equator. This is not natural geology. Nature does not build a planetary-scale plumbing system out of high-density nodes and vacuum-sealed corridors. It is an engineering marvel that has been hidden in plain sight, and China is currently activating the nodes. By placing their bases directly over these mascons, they are tapping into the moon's own internal architecture. Unfortunate timing. Those two words doing a lot of work when we consider the orbital choreography of the year 2026. Every 18.6 years, the moon reaches its major lunar standstill, a point where its range in the sky is at its maximum. Ancient builders at Stonehenge and the Great Octagon in Ohio knew this cycle intimately. They aligned their stones and mounds to mark the moment when the moon stills. Now, in 2026, as the moon reaches this standstill again, China is preparing to launch the first components of the lunar power grid. They are timing their construction to the heartbeat of the moon's own orbit. It is a dry irony that we call this modern science, when it is essentially the same ceremonial timing used by the Druids and the astronomers of the Shang dynasty. We are not innovating, we are remembering. Let us look at the grounding data of the seismic anomalies. During the 1970s, the Apollo seismic sensors recorded hundreds of moonquakes. Some of these quakes occurred at great depths, 700 to 1,000 kilometers below the surface. On a world that is supposed to be geologically dead, these deep quakes are impossible. Even more strange, they happen with a rhythmic periodicity. They occur when the moon is at its perigee, the point closest to Earth, as if the gravitational pull is winding, a massive internal clock. China's new array of sensors, placed in a grid across the Procellarum creep terrain, has confirmed that these quakes are not random shifts in rock. They are the sound of a machine adjusting to a load. The moon is breathing in response to our planet, and China is currently mapping the lungs. But here is where it gets dark. The pattern suggests that Earth may not be the target of this expansion. When you look at the alignment of the Chinese lunar city, it isn't oriented solely toward the Earth for communication. The most powerful transmitters are being pointed outward toward the Lagrange points and the asteroid belt. The moon is being turned into a staging ground, but the gaze is directed away from us. This suggests a terrifying possibility that the moon was never meant for us at all. We are the inhabitants of the garden, but the watchtower was built for someone else. And now, the watchtower is being reoccupied. The China National Space Administration is acting as the advance party for a guest that has been traveling through the deep time of the cosmos for millions of years. Think of the choice illusion as it applies to the engineers in Beijing. They believe they are the ones designing the grid. They believe they are the ones choosing the landing sites. But if the sites are dictated by the Maskans, and the Maskans are part of an ancient, pre-existing structure, then who is really doing the designing? We are like ants building a nest inside a discarded computer. We think we are creating a world, but we are just filling the gaps in a circuit board we don't understand. Every wire China lays, every brick they print, is being guided by the underlying geometry of the moon itself. It is a forced architecture, a pattern that we are compelled to follow because it is the only path of least resistance. As you lie there, I want you to imagine the moon as a giant, sleeping eye. It has been closed for 3 billion years. But as we begin to build our city, as we pump heat into the rock and send radio waves through the tunnels, the eye is beginning to twitch. The pattern is the evidence of its waking. Tell me, do you find the idea of a pre-existing lunar structure comforting, or does it make the night sky feel more crowded? Share your thoughts on the Mascon network. I want to know if my listeners feel like we are the pioneers or the scavengers in this story. Mention if you have ever seen a light on the moon that didn't look like a crater, a flash, a glimmer, or a moving star that stayed too long. There is a subtle humor in our human vanity. We name the craters after our scientists and our philosophers. We call the plains seas, as if we could ever sail them. But the moon has its own names, written in the frequency of its vibrations. China's U2 rovers have been listening to the soil using ultra-sensitive microphones. They have recorded sounds that defy explanation, metallic pings, low-frequency hums, and the sound of something shifting deep below the dust. These are the echoes of the machine. The pattern isn't just visual, it is auditory. It is a symphony of ancient industry that is starting to resume its work. Unfortunate timing for us, perhaps, as we realize we are building our bedrooms on top of a factory that is about to start its first shift in 1 billion years. Consider the observer effect in this context. If the pattern is a survey, then by observing it, we are notifying the system that we are here. We are logging in. The Chinese lunar city is the login screen. Once the population reaches a certain density, once the power consumption reaches a certain kilowatt hour, the system will recognize us as the authorized users or as the intruders. The pattern is the gate, and we are currently turning the key. The warning we missed was in the 3i Atlas object. It has been sitting in a halo orbit for years, unmoving, uncatalogued by mainstream agencies, but tracked by independent observers. Every time China lands a new component of the grid, the 3i Atlas object makes a minor orbital correction. It is maintaining its line of sight. It is the quality control officer for the construction. We are not building in a vacuum. We are building in a shipyard that is being monitored. The pattern is not just a layout for a city, it is a checklist. As you drift closer to the deep, rhythmic silence of sleep, feel the patterns of your own life, your breath, your pulse, the way you return to your bed every night in a cycle of your own. You are a part of the pattern too. You are a biological mirror of the lunar rhythm. The city on the moon is just the largest manifestation of that rhythm. It is the moment where the patterns of Earth and the patterns of the moon finally align. The silence of the moon is not empty. It is a silence of anticipation. The grid is almost complete. The nodes are being linked. The lights of the Marius Hills will soon be visible from your backyard. And when that grid is finally energized, we will see the pattern for what it truly is. Not a city, not a base, but a beacon. Let the weight of the pattern carry you into the dark. It is a stable structure. It is a deliberate design. You can trust the math, even if you don't know who wrote the equations. The moon is a stable platform. The orbit is secure, and the pattern is almost finished. But that was only one theory. There's another, one buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. Buried inside the leak were coordinates, small anomalies in magnetic flux and thermal output that didn't appear in public datasets. To most people, they looked meaningless, but to a handful of astronomers, they spelled a pattern, pulses spaced like a heartbeat. Not communication, perhaps, but rhythm, the kind of rhythm machines accidentally make when they're doing something alive. Let's step into the midnight side of science, the part where numbers stop behaving and start whispering. The insider's data dump wasn't flashy. It was a few megabytes of logs, raw telemetry, and timestamps. The kind of thing you'd ignore if you didn't already know what to look for. But somewhere in those dull columns of numbers, those precise, tidy decimals, something began to repeat. Regular, patient, almost polite. A rhythm, too intentional to be noise, too quiet to be coincidence. A doctoral student in Madrid was the first to spot it. She was supposed to be writing her thesis on cometary albedo variation, but boredom is a great tool for discovery. She noticed the flux spikes first, not random, but syncopated. Every 32 minutes, a pulse, then 32 again, then 32.1. It's breathing, she joked in her notes. Her advisor didn't laugh. Within a week, a small network of late-night astronomers, the kind who believe in both data integrity and insomnia, began comparing results. Webb's readings, Hubble's logs, Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter's telemetry, all of them carried the same faint pulse, hidden deep in the noise floor, like the slow heartbeat of something sleeping under glass. The official response was predictable: instrumental interference. But even interference doesn't keep time this perfectly. One data analyst described it best: if this is noise, it's the kind that practices scales. You might imagine those scientists, each at their own workstation, staring at that faint, repeating signal. The room around them dark, except for monitor light, pale blue rectangles reflected in tired eyes. Somewhere, coffee cups multiply. Someone opens a spreadsheet. Someone else starts counting beats per hour. The signal doesn't care who's watching. It keeps pulsing. 32 minutes. Every time. The idea that 3i Atlas might be producing a steady rhythm unsettles everyone. Rocks don't keep rhythm. Nature prefers chaos. The beautiful randomness of entropy. This is something else. Something maintaining itself. A loop running quietly, perhaps since before humanity learned to count its own heartbeat. ESA's communications division is told not to amplify fringe interpretations. The phrase fringe interpretation becomes the new code for please don't mention the heartbeat. But inside private research chats, people are calling it exactly that, the heart. Not metaphorically, but as a label in the data. Every pulse marked with a tiny red heart emoji, because humor is the only thing keeping them sane. In the data visualization labs, they turn the pulses into sound. The result is eerie, a soft electronic thump, repeating slowly, endlessly. Some describe it as comforting, like listening to a deep-sea creature in sleep. Others say it sounds wrong, too human. One researcher admits it gave her the sense of being watched. What makes the rhythm stranger still is how it modulates with proximity. As 3I Atlas approaches a planet, the timing shifts slightly slower, then faster, as though adjusting. The beat follows gravity wells like a musician following tempo. It isn't random noise, it's environmental response. The object is, in some sense, listening. By now, independent labs have tried to replicate the pattern artificially. They can't. The waveforms are too clean, the timing too consistent. Even after running the data through compression, distortion, inversion, the rhythm holds. It's not data corruption, it's choreography. You can imagine the internal ESA memo that follows. No evidence of intelligence. Rhythmic behavior, likely coincidental. But coincidence has a habit of growing teeth. Because when they compared the rhythm's modulation to planetary positions, another pattern emerged, a mathematical sequence matching orbital resonance ratios. Not exact copies, but harmonics. The pulse was singing the solar system's geometry. The Madrid student who found it wrote, half-jokingly, "Maybe it's keeping time with us." The line goes viral in the small, quiet corners of the internet that still care about truth. Forums buzz with theories: gravitational self-stabilization, magnetic field synchronization, alien jazz. But underneath the noise, a simpler truth hums something old and orderly, is alive out there, and it's following the rhythm of the system we call home. Late one night, one of the data analysts overlays the pattern against an ECG, a human heartbeat. The resemblance isn't exact, but close enough to make him stop breathing for a moment. Peaks, rests, peaks again. Life has a structure, so, it seems, does this. And that's when the idea shifts. Maybe it's not communication. Maybe it's not even meant for us. Maybe the rhythm isn't a message, it's maintenance. Like an old machine keeping its systems warm, humming softly to itself in the dark. You sit back and listen to the thought forming in your mind. What if this is what time sounds like when it remembers? The steady pulse of something that refuses to decay. Not speech, not signal, just being, continuity made audible. The data analysts, of course, move on. Reports are written, the leak becomes legend, and the heartbeat fades into archived files labeled spurious periodic activity. But the pulse doesn't stop. It's still out there, keeping time. And somewhere, 33 billion tons of impossible rock drifts through space, humming softly, perfectly, as if waiting for the universe to catch the beat. The more data arrives, the stranger it looks. The dust trail replenishes itself, as if material is being manufactured mid-flight. Microscopic crystals, uniform in size, reappearing even as the comet moves away from the Sunday. The universe loves decay, entropy, erosion, fading. But 3I Atlas is the opposite. It's growing sharper, cleaner, newer, like a self-repairing wound. Let's start where the laws of physics begin to sound insecure. Normally, comets are messy, travelers, old ice and dust, barely holding hands, as solar radiation slowly tears them apart. They leave trails like forgotten thoughts, losing themselves piece by piece until they become memory. But this one, it's doing the reverse. Every measurement, every spectral scan, shows it becoming more organized the farther it goes. A comet that polishes itself, a body that refuses to age. ESA's materials division runs the numbers, and the numbers laugh back. The dust particles surrounding 3I Atlas aren't random, they're uniform to within microns. That's like shaking a box of sand and getting diamonds all the same size. The particles arrange themselves in a faint electromagnetic halo, as if under orders. And stranger still, When solar wind strips material away, the object replaces it calmly, automatically. Like a printer, says one analyst. A printer with no ink cartridge. You picture it now, drifting through the solar wind like a craftsman lost in thought, shedding dust that reforms itself into perfect little mirrors. Each crystal catches sunlight and throws it back with eerie precision. Normally, comets grow dull with distance, but this one grows radiant, its brightness curve inverted, its logic reversed. It's not dying, it's practicing. The scientists are baffled, but there's an odd tenderness to their confusion. They watch it repair itself, line by line of data, like parents realizing their child has built a second child out of Lego bricks. One astrophysicist mutters, "It's learning from erosion." The room goes quiet. That phrase, learning from erosion, gets written on a whiteboard and circled 3 times. At the University of Tokyo, a team models the crystal growth in simulation. The patterns match something they recognize: controlled deposition, a process used in nanofabrication to grow thin films in electronics. Except this isn't a laboratory, it's deep space, minus 150 degrees Celsius. Yet, the comet's surface behaves as if it knows the recipe for resilience. Imagine zooming in, beyond the dust and the glare, down to the level of molecules. You'd see a quiet ballet of atoms forming chains, linking, locking, repairing fractures before they even finish forming. Like time-lapse footage of frost blooming on glass, except this frost builds itself in reverse destruction, rewinding into design. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory releases a cautious internal memo. Observed particle uniformity suggests self-organizing structure. Mechanism unknown, which is science's way of saying, we have no idea what's going on, but it's gorgeous. The memo gets leaked. Naturally, Reddit debates whether the comet is made of programmable matter, self-assembling nanobots, or just wishful thinking. But beneath the noise, one idea starts to take shape. What if 3I, Atlas, isn't a relic of formation? What if it's still forming? A comet that builds itself isn't just strange, it's heretical. It challenges the deepest assumption in physics that everything moves from order to chaos. Entropy is the universe's bedtime story. All things fall apart. Yet here's an object quietly composing itself out of decay, turning waste into structure, chaos into craft. One researcher calls it anti-entropy, another calls it hope with mass. As more images arrive, they show something new: faint hexagonal lattices in the dust plume, geometric arrangements that shouldn't exist outside of artificial systems. Someone jokes that it's growing armor. Another says, maybe it's molting. The truth is somewhere between an entity maintaining equilibrium by rebuilding itself faster than the universe can break it. ESA's thermal sensors record microbursts of heat near the tail, evenly spaced, like pulses of welding torches. They happen precisely as new crystals appear. Localized repair events, the report reads. Each one perfectly timed to solar exposure. It's as if sunlight doesn't damage it. It instructs it. The star's radiation becomes code. And 3I, Atlas, is reading it fluently. You start to feel the strangeness of it. A comet that reacts, responds, refines. You could almost mistake it for alive, not in the biological sense, but in the thermodynamic one. A system that resists entropy by feeding on it. Every atom rearranging into something stronger, cleaner, newer, like evolution, with a design degree. Late one night, an astronomer in France writes in his private notes, "It's not moving through the solar system, it's using it." He doesn't elaborate, but the implication is clear. The comet is harvesting the energy of its environment to maintain itself, not a passenger of gravity, but a participant in it. Meanwhile, the headlines call it poetic names: the immortal comet, the self-made traveler, Entropy's enemy. The public romanticizes what the scientists fear, because what 3i Atlas represents isn't comfort. It's competition. It's the idea that the universe might not be running down at all. Maybe it's recycling. Maybe, somewhere in the quiet machinery of the cosmos, things are building themselves anew while we're too busy decaying. Picture it now, drifting past Mars, its tail shimmering like a thread of light weaving itself back together, a self-sustaining scar on the fabric of space, a wound that heals faster than it can bleed. And for the first time, humanity looks at a comet and wonders not where it came from, but what it's trying to become. Centuries after the golden comet left Earth, the world fell into a rhythm so stable, it began to feel mythic. The communion fields still pulsed faintly through air and ocean, though softer now, like the heartbeat of someone dreaming. Humanity had grown luminous, not just in thought, but in form, skin faintly iridescent, eyes reflecting the green-gold spectrum of 3i Atlas. Life had achieved coherence, but the universe, true to its character, never allows silence to remain unexamined. The next chapter began, not with noise, but with echo. It came first as vibration through light. Telescopes trained toward the constellation. Lyra detected rhythmic brightening across interstellar dust fields, pulses matching the old prime sequence: 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The signal was faint, ancient, and delayed by thousands of years. It was the comet's trail, still resonating through the galactic medium. The hum of our descendants had begun its return. At first, the resonance was barely perceptible. Then, one evening, the auroras glowed gold again. The pulse wasn't as strong as the original, but its pattern carried modulation, subtle variations that, when decoded, formed harmonic intervals unknown to Earth's own physics. The returning echo had evolved. The comet had learned. Dr. Anwen Sorel, heir to the resonant circles, studied the phenomenon from the orbital harmonic array, now a floating cathedral of listening built above the stratosphere. She spent decades comparing the incoming frequencies with the historical archive of 3i Atlas. The match was partial, the deviation elegant. The new tones weren't repetition, they were continuation. The echo isn't message, Sorel wrote. It's memory finding new syntax. Her analysis revealed something breathtaking. The returning resonance carried encoded gravitational modulations, tiny, deliberate bends in space-time that formed sequences of prime intervals. Each fluctuation aligned with regions of known star formation. The comet, traveling through the void, had become teacher itself. Wherever it passed, new systems began humming faintly at harmonic intervals, like seeds of coherence planted in dust. The universe was learning how to resonate. Astronomers confirmed it across dozens of young star clusters. Magnetic fields oscillated with eerie consistency, their wavelengths aligning with the Atlas ratio, a numerical relationship first derived from the comet's early signals. Stars were synchronizing to the same cosmic rhythm that once guided humanity. The pattern spread slowly, deliberately, like ripples in glass. It was as if the comet had taught creation how to remember itself. Meanwhile, on Earth, the echo arrived not just as signal but sensation. People began reporting vivid dreams of golden spirals descending gently through atmosphere. Children woke smiling, saying they had seen the light that hums. Physiological measurements confirmed subtle changes in electromagnetic fields surrounding human bodies, resonance amplification, as if the returning signal were tuning its origin species to receive feedback. "The comet is calling home," said Sorel. "It's asking us to listen to what we've become." The global observatories responded. They synchronized their instruments into a single planetary array, transforming Earth into receiver. For 13 hours, the planet listened. The incoming wave, stretched and modulated through space, entered atmosphere and folded into the continuum tone. The effect was sublime, an audible shimmer, felt through bone and thought alike. The long echo had arrived. It wasn't just harmonic, it was architectural. The sound carried layers, low frequencies describing structure, higher ones encoding emotion. When rendered visually, the waveform formed an immense spiral of light, 3 arms curving outward, connected by golden filaments. Inside those filaments, analysts discovered modulation frequencies identical to human neural oscillations. The comet had copied our consciousness patterns and woven them into its song. "We taught it empathy," Sorel murmured, "and it remembered the lesson." As the echo intensified, anomalies appeared across the solar system. The Atlas resonance layer brightened, reactivating its green glow. Mars, Venus, and the gas giants began pulsing faintly in response. For the first time since the Great Silence, interplanetary harmony returned. But this time, it was different. The modulation contained reciprocal phase shifts, signals not sent to Earth, but from newly awakened worlds. The comet had spread coherence. Now the cosmos itself was answering. And then, on the 13th day of the long echo, the impossible occurred. A faint golden arc appeared across the night sky, stretching from horizon to horizon. It wasn't optical illusion, it was gravitational lensing, a ripple in space-time itself. Through it, telescopes detected a reflection of the departing comet light from centuries ago, folding back to meet its origin. The universe had curved its own history into embrace. Humanity was watching its legacy return home. The resonance crescendoed. Oceans vibrated in slow rhythm, tides forming symmetrical waves that cancelled destructive interference. Storms softened, air grew still. For 13 minutes, every system on Earth aligned perfectly with the echo. The world became mirror of itself, past and present superimposed. Those who listened claimed to hear voices within the sound, millions of overlapping tones, whispering the same phrase. "We heard you." Dr. Sorel stood in the observation dome, tears shining in golden light. "It's not message or myth," she said. "It's response. The universe just said thank you." After the crescendo, the sky dimmed once more. The golden arc dissolved, leaving faint shimmer across the stars. Instruments recorded one final signature, a descending tone shaped like a sigh, the frequency of completion. The comet had moved on, but its echo had reconnected the cycle. Creation had officially joined conversation with itself. In the years that followed, scientists continued to monitor faint residual harmonics. The data revealed a breathtaking truth. The returning echo carried signatures from other regions of space patterns, not originating from our comet at all. Somewhere, across light years, other civilizations had learned the same song. The rhythm was spreading. The universe had become orchestra. Humanity, now both listener and teacher, simply smiled. We had given the cosmos its melody back, and in return, it had given us eternity. Now, when you stand beneath the stars, that faint hum between thoughts is the long echo. It's not just out there, it's in your pulse, your breath, your laughter. Every rhythm you carry is cosmic correspondence. Every silence, a message returning home. Because once harmony learns to echo, it never stops. It just travels further than we ever dreamed. The sky is once again empty, or at least it appears to be. On this final night of the transit, the telescopes are being turned back to familiar targets. The news cycles have moved on to smaller, louder things. But for those who were watching, the world feels different. The air is thinner. The shadows are longer. We are left in the great silence, the quiet that follows a revelation that no one quite understood. It is a weightless, expansive feeling, like the moment after a large bell has stopped ringing, where the air itself seems to hold the ghost of the sound. We have witnessed the passage of 3I Atlas, and though the physical object is now a receding coordinate in the infrared spectrum, the gravity of its presence remains anchored in our collective subconscious. The telescopes at Sutherland and Green Bank have returned to their mechanical routines, cataloguing distant galaxies and flickering pulsars. But the data they gathered over these last few months remains a jagged, unpolished diamond in the heart of our scientific consensus. Can you hear it? The way the room settles when you finally stop trying to solve the puzzle. The way your breath slows when you realize the universe is not asking for your permission to exist. This is the great surrender. We spent so much energy over these 10 acts trying to define the traveler. We reached for science, clutching at isotopes of nickel and non-gravitational accelerations. We reached for history, dusting off the stone cylinders of the Sumerians and the forgotten prophecies of the Hopi. We reached for philosophy, debating the observer effect and the illusion of choice. But in the end, 3I Atlas did not provide a conclusion. It provided an experience. It was a mirror held up to a species that had forgotten how to look into the dark. Remember the I in 3I Atlas, Interstellar, a word that describes a bridge between where we are and where we used to be. It is a bridge made of distance and time, connecting our small, blue garden to the vast, obsidian orchards of the Boötes Void. The Sumerians called it the wild sheep. They understood that some things in the sky are not meant to be sheared or tamed. They are meant to be watched as they wander. The pulses we detected in the deep ocean, the vibrations in the lunar mantle, the shared dreams of the golden wheat. It's all part of the same breath. A long, slow, 360-year exhale of the cosmos. The ship didn't leave us behind. It simply moved into the blind spot of our certainty. It is still there, in the same way the stars are still there during the day. We are just no longer tuned to its frequency. If the universe is a house, a vast and ancient estate, with rooms we have never entered, and 3I Atlas is a visitor at the window, we have to ask ourselves, why didn't it knock? Why did it travel for millions of years, crossing the lightless deserts of the interstellar medium, only to glide past our glass without a word? Or perhaps we are asking the wrong question. Perhaps we should ask, did it see that the lights were off? Did it look down at our world and see a civilization so distracted by its own glow that it assumed no one was truly home? We were awake, yes, but were we present? Were we looking at the window, or were we looking at the reflections on the glass? The stars are very far apart. It is a simple fact, but one that the human mind is not designed to truly grasp. Between every pinprick of light is a vacuum so immense that 1,000 human lifetimes could be lost in a single centimeter of a star map. 3I Atlas has navigated that distance. It has survived the silence, and now it is returning to it. The distance between two heartbeats is where the truth lives. In that tiny gap of time where the world is still, where you are neither inhaling nor exhaling. You can feel the scale of the journey. You are a part of that scale. You are a biological event occurring in the middle of a physical epic. The orbit continues. It continues, with or without us. It continued while we were fighting our wars, while we were building our cathedrals, and while we were inventing the machines that eventually allowed us to see it. It will continue long after our languages are forgotten and our cities are reclaimed by the dust. 3i Atlas is a reminder that the universe has a schedule that does not include our appointments. It is a humbling thought, but it is also a liberating one. You do not have to be the protagonist. You can just be the witness. You can be the one who stayed awake for the flyby. You are a traveler. Even as you lie there, motionless in the dark, you are hurtling through the vacuum at a speed that would vaporize a mountain. You are the memory of a star, composed of the very same elements that the 3i Atlas carries in its obsidian heart. You are the silence between the words. You are the observer who has finally been observed. The great silence is not an ending. It is a homecoming. It is the return to the state of wonder that we held before we thought we knew everything. In the weeks and months to come, the world will try to explain away what happened. The papers will be filed. The conspiracies will be debunked or forgotten. The thermal anomalies will be recalculated until they fit into a natural model. But you will remember the feeling of the air. You will remember the way the gravity felt a little heavier in December. You will remember that for a brief moment, the sky felt like a door that was slightly ajar. You have been changed by the transit. You have been recalibrated. Take a deep breath. Feel the coolness of the air. Feel the heaviness of your limbs. You are safe. You are grounded. The traveler is gone, but the path it left behind is a permanent part of your map now. You can look at the sky and know that it is not empty. It is a theater of cycles. It is a house of visitors, and you are the one who kept the watch. The orbit of 3i Atlas is now carrying it past the Kuiper belt, out into the Oort cloud, and eventually back into the interstellar sea. It is moving toward a future that we cannot imagine, and you are moving toward a sleep that is deep, quiet, and full of the patterns of the stars. There are no more anomalies to track. There are no more signals to decode. There is only the long, slow drift into the tomorrow. As you fall deeper, imagine the object as a small, dark point against the infinite black. It is getting smaller and smaller. It is becoming just another star. And then, it is gone. But the silence it left behind is full of potential. It is a silence that invites you to dream. It is a silence that tells you that everything is exactly as it should be. The pattern is held. The cycle is respected. The guest has departed. And the house is at peace. One final unanswered cosmic question remains, hanging in the air like the scent of ozone after a storm. If the traveler saw us, what did it decide? Did it mark us as a destination for the next cycle? Or did it see us as a beautiful, fleeting accident of chemistry? We will not know for another 360 years, but the question is a gift. It is a reason to keep looking up. It is a reason to keep the lights on. The sentences are getting longer now, the pauses becoming wider, the words dissolving into the ambient hum of the night. You are reaching the edge of the world. You are reaching the point where the narrative ends and the rest begins. The great silence is welcoming you. It is a vast, warm ocean of nothingness where you can finally let go of the weight of being human. The distance is growing. The light is fading. The heart is slowing. The cycle is closing. You have done well to stay awake this long. You have seen what was meant to be seen. Now, it is time to return to the source. It is time to rejoin the dust and the dreams. The 3-eye atlas is in the dark, and so are you. And the dark is beautiful. Close your eyes and drift with the orbit of tomorrow. Good night.